Chapter 772, Extraordinary Ability. Due to 1,000 transformations, the temperature in the smithy had increased rapidly. Ye Feng felt as if he stood in the mouth of a volcano. Despite standing 10 yards away from the flawed weapon, Ye Feng received tens of damage with each passing second. If a player with low fire resistance stood in his place, they would not last 10 seconds. Fortunately, Fire Dance was cocooned deep inside the magic array. She did not receive a single point of damage from the heat. Naturally, Silura didn't need to worry about the heat. Stand further away. Silura reminded Ye Feng with a low command. A bottle of dark blue liquid then appeared in her hands. The instant Silura took out this bottle, the smithy's temperature decreased significantly. Ye Feng was still basking in the aftertaste of Silura's forging process. However, upon hearing Silura's reminder, he ran out of the smithy. Ye Feng was no stranger to forgers. He was even a famous forger himself. Although Ye Feng had watched master forgers work many times in the past, he had never once witnessed the forging process of a grandmaster forger. He had never imagined there was actually such a huge difference between a master forger and a grandmaster forger. The experience of watching Silura work had been quite valuable. Even after 10 years, grandmaster forgers had still been extremely rare in God's domain. Even the guild leader of a super guild had to treat such an existence with great respect. One could imagine just how high a grandmaster forger's status was. Initially, Ye Feng had thought that the largest difference between a master forger and a grandmaster forger was their research and understanding of materials. However, after watching Silura work, he realized the difference wasn't just the understanding of materials. A master forger could never hope to compare to a grandmaster's understanding of divine runes, curses, and magic arrays as well. It was no wonder why the master forgers of Shadow had never reached grandmaster status, regardless of how hard they had tried. The strength of grandmaster forgers was ridiculous. Fortunately, I recorded Silura's entire recasting process. Afterward, if I show the recording to Melancholic Smile and the others, they might have a better chance of becoming grandmaster forgers. Ye Feng, who waited outside Silura's house, could not help smiling. After Ye Feng had left the house, Silura opened the deep blue bottle and poured a single drop of the deep blue liquid onto the glowing 1,000 transformations. The instant the deep blue liquid connected with 1,000 transformations, the flawed weapon cooled at a visible rate. The smithy also chilled to become a frozen hell. Although the smithy looked simple, extremely powerful magic arrays strengthened the area. Nothing from the outside world could disturb the house's interior. Likewise, nothing inside the house could disturb the outside world. Hence, Ye Feng, who stood outside the house, was safe. He could not even sense the drastic changes inside the house. Only after another half an hour had passed did Silura call Ye Feng back. 1,000 transformations had already cooled completely. It was finished. The flawed weapon was white as snow. The sword's blade also emitted a faint glow, looking like a star in the night sky. Despite doing nothing beyond hovering in the air, Ye Feng could feel a frightening power radiating from the short sword. Was it a success? Ye Feng asked curiously. If it were a success, then the moment Fire Dance equipped the weapon, her attributes would most likely surpass his by a wide margin. After all, he only had a single fragmented legendary item on his person. A complete legendary item had the power to decimate the heaven and earth. Several epic items and a fragmented legendary item could not compare. Unfortunately, Silura shook her head in disappointment and said, "Although I've completed the runes on the sword, there are some defects in the original materials. It can only reach fragmented legendary rank. If I had the complete 1,000 transformations, it might have become a legendary weapon." Ye Feng expressed his sympathy when he saw Silura's disappointment. Every grandmaster forger dreamed of creating a legendary weapon of their own. Although Silura had not been forging an entirely new weapon, only recasting one, if she succeeded, it would be of immense help towards making a legendary weapon in the future. However, he had expected this. A legendary weapon was not easily obtainable. It was not something he would stumble across after completing a single hidden epic quest. A fragmented legendary item was the limit. If he wanted to obtain a legendary weapon, he would have to complete a legendary quest at the very minimum. If Galaxy Past knew that his death had given Zero Wing an additional fragmented legendary item, he would probably die from a heart attack. Ye Feng could imagine just how much effort Galaxy Past had put into obtaining 1,000 transformations. However, it had fallen into Zero Wing's hands. As for Feather, the future god-ranked assassin, Ye Feng could only apologize to him. "Come, test it out," Celiora said as she turned to Fire Dance, who had been frozen in place throughout this process. Players could wield and test any weapon in God's domain. However, if they did not meet the necessary requirements, they could not use the weapon in battle. When Fire Dance grasped the hovering 1,000 transformations, she was instantly stunned. Only after a long moment did she dazedly make a few casual swings. Suddenly, a silver flash appeared in the smithy. Despite only swinging the weapon a few times, it felt as if the silver sword were present throughout the building. Moreover, only the sacred sword-killing ray in Ye Feng's hands could match this sword's speed. So strong. Ye Feng watched the myriad of sword images that filled the space, feeling threatened. Despite being a Void Realm expert, he could not predict the 1,000 transformations' attack trajectory. He also couldn't tell which image was real and which image was just an afterimage. They all seemed real and fake at the same time. Is this the true power of 1,000 transformations? Ye Feng had watched Feather's battle videos in the past. However, 1,000 transformations had not been this powerful. Although Feather's attacks with 1,000 transformations had also created numerous sword images, a refinement realm expert could, more or less, differentiate the fakes from the real deal. Meanwhile, Ye Feng had already reached the Void Realm, yet he couldn't differentiate between the sword images Fire Dance had created. Even though he could feel many of the sword images were fake and were out of sync with Fire Dance's movements, the pressure these sword images gave off felt very real to him. There is a reason why this sword was named the 1,000 Transformations. When swung, it can transform its user's attack into a myriad of forms and confuse the enemy. However, when the opponent attempts to retaliate, they will quickly discover that most of the sword images are fake. Yet, when struck by these fakes, they will receive damage. 1,000 transformations can interchange illusions with reality. It's a pity that it did not become a legendary weapon. It would have been truly magnificent, Celiora explained, smiling. As she had personally upgraded this weapon to fragmented legendary rank, she understood 1,000 transformations like the palm of her hand. How about it? Do you feel any discomfort while using it? Fire Dance was still deeply immersed in the sensation of using 1,000 transformations. Even after Celiora asked her a question, she remained unresponsive. However, judging from Fire Dance's current reaction, it was obvious that the weapon fit her like a glove. Guild leader, it feels like this weapon is a part of my body. I can even feel the blade cut across air. Fire Dance said excitedly as she wielded 1,000 transformations like a favorite toy. Of course. This is a fragmented legendary weapon Lady Celiora has personally adjusted for you. It should fit you far better than any other fragmented legendary weapon. You should feel that way, Ye Feng laughed. Alright, stop playing with it for now. 1,000 transformations already belongs to you. You have all the time in the world to analyze it. Let me see its attributes. Chapter 773, Strongest Attributes. Ye Feng was incredibly curious to see how powerful a fragmented legendary weapon was. There were quite a number of fragmented legendary items in God's domain. However, those who had obtained fragmented legendary items were not fools. They would not intentionally reveal their items' attributes, allowing their opponents an opportunity to guess their strength and discover weaknesses. Moreover, fragmented legendary items that belonged to large guilds were kept as guild secrets. They wouldn't even advertise owning one, much less revealing the item's attributes. Although Ye Feng had been Shadow's guild leader in the past, the guild had not owned a single fragmented legendary item. On the other hand, the guild had owned quite a few epic items. However, at the end of the day, an epic weapon was only an epic weapon. It could never compare to a fragmented legendary weapon. Hearing Ye Feng's request, Fire Dance lost her composure. Hurriedly, she sent Ye Feng the 1,000 transformation statistics. As expected of a fragmented legendary weapon. Compared to this, an epic weapon is practically garbage. Ye Feng's hands involuntarily trembled when he saw the weapon's attributes. 1,000 transformations, one-handed sword, fragmented legendary rank. Equipment requirement, strength 700, agility 700. Attack power, 200% of strength. Attack speed, 2% of agility. All attributes increases according to user's level. When equipped. Strength increased by 50%, agility increased by 60%, intelligence increased by 40%, endurance increased by 50%, attack speed increased by 50%. Ignore levels plus 20. All skills plus 3 levels. All item level requirements reduced by 10 levels. Attacks half. 60% chance to trigger deadly blow, increasing damage by 220% and attack speed by 20%. 20% chance to trigger critical point effect, ignoring all block and defense effects, and dealing 330% weapon damage. Additional skill 1 dash. Phantom, when activated, summons 5 doppelgangers. The doppelgangers share attributes with the wielder. They do not have any attack power. All attacks against doppelgangers will have no effect. User can freely swap positions with any of the 5 doppelgangers without cooldown. Duration 30 seconds. Cooldown 1 hour. Additional skill 2 dash. True Illusion. If wielder dies within 40 seconds upon activation, wielder will respawn at full HP nearby. Grants 3 seconds of invulnerability. All buffs before death will remain in effect. Cooldown 48 hours. Additional skill 3 dash. Illusory Power. Increases strength by 80%, agility by 100%, and movement speed by 70%. All damage received has a 50% chance to be sent into the void. Grants immunity to all control effects. Duration 3 minutes. Cooldown 5 hours. Created by famed Smith Jax. 1000 Transformations is 65th of God's Domain's 108 flawed weapons. It had lost all its power due to the blade's destruction. However, it had been recast by Grandmaster Forger Celiora. Unable to be dropped. Unable to be traded. Unable to be destroyed. User, Fire Dance. An epic weapon could never hope to compare to the 1000 Transformations attributes, much less the additional skills. This weapon was perfect for assassins. However, the most impressive aspect of 1000 Transformations was the True Illusion skill. It was even more amazing than the full revival skill. Even when a player revived with full revival, they would still have to suffer the death penalty and lose a level. Moreover, the monster they fought would leave combat due to their death. When said player challenged the same monster again, the monster would have recovered to full HP. The player would have to start the battle all over again. However, True Illusion was different. It could dismiss a player's death, allowing them to reappear with full HP without needing to lose a level. Even if one died in mid-battle against a monster, they could reappear and continue fighting immediately. In PvP, this skill was even more powerful. In ordinary duels, this skill might not be useful as the system would declare the outcome of the battle as soon as a player's HP fell to 1. In a death match, however, the battle would only end after a player had died. In such a situation, True Illusion would take effect, allowing the player to reappear with full HP instantly. The system would not judge the player as the loser and the battle would continue. With this skill, with the survivability of assassins, it would be near possible to kill Fire Dance. If one did not have the strength to instant kill Fire Dance, they would not be able to kill her at all. Moreover, 1000 Transformations was now a personal weapon. Even if others wanted the flawed weapon, they could not steal it from her. Of course, if Fire Dance obtained better equipment, 1000 Transformations would go to waste. There were both pros and cons. Can you equip it now? Ye Feng asked Fire Dance, his excitement evident in his tone. If Fire Dance could equip 1000 Transformations right now, they would have a much easier time in the Dark Arena. After all, that was a team battle. An individual's strength was limited. To prevent monster-like characters from dominating the entire competition, the Dark Arena ran team battles. This way the outcome was much harder to predict. It was also impossible for one player to carry a battle team to victory. A battle team was only likely to secure victory if the majority of the members were very powerful. If Fire Dance equipped 1000 Transformations, it would undeniably increase the Azura battle team's chances of victory. My agility is sufficient. However, I don't have enough strength. Fire Dance was similarly tempted and wished she could equip the new weapon immediately. However, the weapon demanded 700 strength, and of everyone in Zero Wing, only Ye Feng had met this requirement. How far are you from the requirement? Ye Feng asked. I'm short by 133 points. Fire Dance felt helpless. Unfortunately, she had placed the majority of her free attribute points into agility. Her Tier 3 gemstones were also all agility types. However, had she not focused on her agility, she wouldn't have enough for that requirement either. That's quite a lot. Ye Feng frowned. If it were only several dozen points, he had some ways to make up for the gap. However, over 100 points was a little too much. Unless she could replace her equipment. Right now that you're level 38, you should be able to equip the Petrified Thorn. Try. The Tier 1 set equipment for assassins, the Dark Melody set, could decrease the equipment requirement by 3 levels. The Petrified Thorn could only be equipped at level 40. As for the other equipment requirements, Fire Dance had fulfilled them long ago. She could equip the Petrified Thorn now. Being reminded by Ye Feng, Fire Dance hurriedly replaced the Subhand True Fire Blade with the Petrified Thorn. Immediately, her attributes skyrocketed. Not only did an epic weapon provide more fixed attributes, but it also increased a player's basic attributes by a fixed percentage after being equipped. Take the Petrified Thorn for example. When equipped, it would increase the wielder's strength and agility by 10%. Moreover, the True Fire Blade was only a level 30 dark gold weapon. How could it possibly compete with a level 40 epic weapon in terms of attributes? Sure enough, after Fire Dance equipped the Petrified Thorn, she was only 32 strength short of reaching 700 points. Afterward, Ye Feng led Fire Dance to the Candlelight Trading Firm and had her replace some of the Tier 3 Agility Gemstones with Tier 3 Strength Gemstones, instantly pushing her strength to 700 points. Her agility remained above 700 as well. "Test it out," Ye Feng said. He could not help but laugh at Fire Dance's slightly nervous expression. MHM. Fire Dance then replaced her main weapon with 1,000 transformations. Immediately, Fire Dance's aura changed massively. The pressure Ye Feng felt from her also increased tremendously. The assassin now felt like a ferocious beast that had just woken and bared its sharp fangs. Ye Feng was incomparably excited to see Fire Dance's strength increase. Currently, in terms of basic attributes, Fire Dance had surpassed him. "Alright, it's time to make a trip to the Fire Dragon Empire." Ye Feng smiled. Chapter 774, Four Great Empires. In one of the bars in Starmoon City's slums, a middle-aged man in silver robes turned and looked at his surroundings. After confirming that no one had followed him, he walked into the bar. Aside from the NPC barkeeper, the bar's only occupant was a white-haired youth dressed in exquisite black leather armor. When the white-haired youth, who had been enjoying a bottle of vodka in silence, sensed the silver-robed man walk over, he turned around and smiled, saying, "You're finally here. It seems that Black Flame has put you through quite the ringer. Did you finish what I asked you to do?" The silver-robed man was none other than Sky from the Flower of Seven Sins. He was also the first Void Realm expert Ye Feng had killed. Sky's position in the Flower of Seven Sins was extraordinary. He could be considered one of the organization's key figures. Normally, upon meeting, the Flower's members only felt fear and respect. They were deeply afraid of offending Sky, who had a strange personality. Yet, when speaking with this man, the white-haired youth remained calm and natural. If the other members saw this, they would definitely be shocked. "As you guessed, he can steal players' immortal souls. However, I did not discover that item's presence on him. Really though, this incident has ruined me. I wasn't able to log into the game for 3 days. I've fallen behind in levels. I even lost an excellent pair of shoes. Say, how do you intend to compensate me for the losses?" Sky said, annoyance clear in his tone as he glared at the gloating youth. "Fine. They were just a pair of shoes. What do you think of this?" the white-haired youth asked, laughing. He then revealed a pair of level 35 dark gold ranked combat boots. Currently, God's Domain's mainstream players were around level 30, while its experts were level 33. Even expert players were barely reaching level 35. Yet, the white-haired youth could so easily hand Sky a pair of level 35 dark gold ranked combat boots. Even level 30 dark gold equipment was very difficult to obtain, not to mention level 35 dark gold equipment. That is more like it. Anything less and you'd fail to live up to your name, Silver. Sky, however, was not particularly surprised. He accepted the combat boots. "You really are a strange one. Instead of looking for him yourself, you chose me to test his strength and learn whether or not he has that item. Isn't this just a waste of time? With your abilities, can't you find an opportunity to kill him fairly easily?" "You don't understand. There is only one chance to obtain that item. In the off chance that I alert him, I will lose that one opportunity. Besides, it was fortunate that I didn't join you. It would have been too difficult to kill him. He didn't bring the item with him either. Killing him would have been useless." Silver shook his head. Laughing softly, he said, "I am not in a rush anyway. In any case, I have other places to be as well. However, I need you to keep a close eye on him and report any movement to me. As for the reward you requested, I'll take care of it as soon as possible. However, you mustn't forget that only you and I know this information. If I find that word has gotten out, you will suffer the consequences." Sky involuntarily shivered under Silver's warning glare. Hurriedly he replied, I understand. Silver was a true upper echelon of the Flower of Seven Sins. Throughout the organization's history, Silver was the only player to join the organization's upper echelons at such a young age. His strength and abilities were extraordinary. If he offended Silver, not only would he find it impossible to mingle in God's domain, but he would also suffer in the real world. Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon Imperial City. God's domain was the home of numerous empires. The four great empires, however, towered above the rest. The Fire Dragon Empire was one of these four. The Beast Empire's imperial capital only had a player population of around 10 million. Flame Dragon City, however, had a population of over 30 million. Beast City could not compete with Flame Dragon City. At the same time, Flame Dragon City was also one of the four venues that often hosted the Dark Arena. Flame Dragon City's territory was also massive. Compared to Flame Dragon City, Starmoon City and White River City were merely small children. Currently, a large number of players had gathered in Flame Dragon City's underground arena. Every one of these players either held prominent positions in the virtual gaming world or was one of God's domain's many overlords. No one could afford to offend a single one of these players. Currently, ordinary players could not enter the underground arena as a super guild had cordoned off the area. If a player dared to cause a scene here, they would find themselves very quickly removed from God's domain. Hence, no one dared to approach without an invitation. Big Sis Rain, it's almost time, yet those people haven't arrived yet. Should we have the others prepare for now? A charming beauty wearing luxurious purple mage robes asked Phoenix Rain softly. We still have some time. It won't hurt to wait a little longer. If they aren't going to show up, we'll have the others take their place, Phoenix Rain said as she glanced at the charming beauty beside her. Smiling, she continued, Blue, I know you have a low opinion of Zero Wing, but Black Flame is the expert who defeated Martial Dragon. Just a while ago he even defeated Sky from the Flower of Seven Sins. His strength is at the pinnacle of God's domain. In the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Blue Phoenix was no less famous than Martial Dragon. She was one of the top combatants the Phoenix Pavilion had paid a large price to nurture secretly. However, due to Martial Dragon awakening his domain a step ahead of her, Blue Phoenix was weaker than Martial Dragon. Even so, she was still an expert ranking at the very top of God's domain. Originally, Phoenix Rain had intended to allow Blue Phoenix to lead the battle team, taking advantage of her strength to make a fortune. However, Black Flame's sudden appearance had changed her mind. If she had Black Flame lead the battle team instead, she had a better chance of keeping herself hidden. At the very least, nobody would connect her with this battle team. But Black Flame looks down on us. Big Sis Rain, you only obtained this battle team slot after a lot of trouble, yet they haven't shown themselves and we're losing time before the match begins. This shows that they're not taking this seriously at all. How could someone like this fight with everything they have in the match? Blue Phoenix complained indignantly. As Phoenix Rain waited quietly for Shifeng's arrival, a woman in a set of glamorous purple robes appeared before her. This beautiful woman radiated the air of luxury. Why, if it isn't Miss Feng? I never thought that after so many years, you'd still be a measly pavilion master. If you had agreed to my brother's conditions, you wouldn't be in such a pitiful state, Exemplary Willow said, giggling. Her eyes, however, contained ridicule as she spoke. And here I wondered who had appeared before me. So it's Miss Lu too, who recently suffered a miserable defeat at the hands of an upstart guild like Zero Wing. Phoenix Rain chuckled while covering her mouth with her hand. Hearing Phoenix Rain come back, Exemplary Willow flared with anger like a cat whose tail got stepped on. Feng Qinyu, don't think that you've won just yet. Sooner or later I'll teach you that all your efforts are for nothing. Your fate has already been determined and cannot be changed. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion cannot help you. Not to mention you're still just a measly little pavilion master. Exemplary Willow snorted as she stomped away. After Exemplary Willow left, however, Phoenix Rain's complexion darkened slightly. Big Sis Rain, time's up. The organizer is ushering us to get ready. What should we do? Blue Phoenix asked. Chapter 775, Sure Kill Spell. Could he have forgotten? Phoenix Rain frowned slightly. In truth, she had more confidence in her subordinates than in Black Flame. After all, she had gone to great lengths to nurture these subordinates, molding them into experts. Moreover, they wore the best equipment the Phoenix Pavilion had to offer. She had invested a lot of time and effort into this match. Even Zero Wing, a guild famed for its equipment, was unlikely to have better equipment. Immediately, Phoenix Rain called up the system interface, intending to contact Black Flame. If the man truly wasn't going to show up, then she could only send her subordinates into the match. Although there was the risk of exposing her identity, winning the match was equally important. Just as Phoenix Rain was about to click Contact Friend, Ye Feng appeared in her line of sight. However, rather than his appearance of Black Flame, Ye Feng wore the features of Ye Feng. Hello, Phoenix Pavilion Master. I am Ye Feng, the leader of the battle team guild leader Black Flame has sent, Ye Feng explained slowly. Hello. May I know where your guild leader is right now? Phoenix Rain asked as she looked at Ye Feng, not taking him seriously. She knew of Ye Feng. In her opinion, however, this was only a trap Black Flame had set to confuse the enemy battle team. Black Flame should be the battle team's true leader rather than this young man before her. Guild leader has something important to take care of, so he delegated all responsibilities regarding the battle team to me. If Phoenix Pavilion Master has any questions, please feel free to ask. Ye Feng could tell what was going through Phoenix Rain's mind. Laughing, he said, Moreover, Phoenix Pavilion Master, do you really think that it is appropriate for Zero Wing's guild leader to take part in such a competition? Then, are you saying that guild leader Black Flame won't be participating in the Dark Arena at all? Phoenix Raid asked with a chilling tone, wrathful flames flaring up in her eyes. This development was unexpected. Of course. However, Phoenix Pavilion Master, please rest assured. We won't disappoint you, Ye Feng said, not particularly minding Phoenix Rain's anger. Calmly he continued, if Phoenix Pavilion Master is still unsure, you can test my strength personally. Ye Feng was very curious about Phoenix Rain's current strength. In the past, countless guilds had fallen into Phoenix Rain's hands. There was even an instance where multiple Apex experts banded together to deal with Phoenix Rain, yet without exception she defeated every one of them. Back then, the assassination attempt had boosted Phoenix Rain's prestige in God's domain. She had been given the Demon Queen title as a result. After all, not only was she a country-toppling beauty, but she also possessed an absolute strength that allowed her to step on Apex experts. Those Apex experts who had tried to deal with Phoenix Rain had admitted that, when they had fought Phoenix Rain, she had killed them without taking any damage at all. Those Apex experts had been to gods to Ye Feng. He had only been able to look up to them. Yet, such experts hadn't been able to land a finger on Phoenix Rain, even after banding together. Phoenix Rain's strength was inconceivable. However, after that battle, Phoenix Rain had practically avoided combat. She had left all matters to Blue Phoenix to handle. As a result, Phoenix Rain's true strength remained a mystery in God's domain. At this moment, Blue Phoenix stepped forward and said, as expected of the team leader favored by guild leader Black Flame. Since you're so confident, let me have a bout with you. Blue Phoenix was furious with Zero Wing. Black Flame had actually decided to neglect such an important match, passing all responsibility to a subordinate instead. At this point, she intended to teach Zero Wing's members a lesson and humiliating Black Flame. Of course, I have no issues with that. However, it doesn't seem like we have much time, Ye Feng said after glancing the time. They only had 15 minutes before the competition officially began. If they did not enter the arena before the competition started, they would automatically forfeit the match, and their opponents would win without even fighting. 1 minute will be more than enough, Blue Phoenix said as she glanced at Ye Feng's level, which he had modified to appear as level 35. Phoenix Pavilion Master, what are your thoughts? Ye Feng turned to look at Phoenix Rain. I'm also curious about guild leader Black Flame's judgment. Since he has chosen you to serve as the team leader, let me see your strength. If you cannot survive for 1 minute, I can only say that guild leader Black Flame is overly optimistic. If that's the case, I'll have to reconsider our cooperation. Despite observing Ye Feng for a long time, she did not think that Ye Feng was particularly strong. Although she felt a faint pressure from him, this pressure was minimal. It was far from the massive pressure she felt from Black Flame. The nearby dueling ring is available. You two can fight there. In truth, Phoenix Rain was also curious about Ye Feng's identity. She had seen Ye Feng's name in Zero Wing's investigation report before. However, Ye Feng had only appeared briefly during God's domain's early stages. Afterward, he had not accomplished anything notable. Yet, Black Flame had given Ye Feng full authority over the battle team for such an important event like the Dark Arena. Even Aqua Rose, Zero Wing's vice leader, was only the battle team's second in command. How could this situation not pique her interest? Based on Phoenix Rain's impression, Black Flame was a man of absolute calm. He knew his priorities and had glimpsed upon the world of the great. It was impossible that Black Flame did not understand the importance of the Dark Arena. Yet, he still delegated all responsibility to Ye Feng. It would be unwise to cast aside Ye Feng without testing the young man. Hence, she decided to take the time to test Ye Feng's strength. If he could last 1 minute against Blue Phoenix, then he was relatively strong. It would not be impossible for him to secure victory in the upcoming match. After all, the other Zero Wing members of the battle team were relatively strong as well. Since Phoenix Pavilion Master doesn't have any problems with it, I have no issues with it either, Ye Feng laughed as he walked towards the dueling ring. There were many dueling rings inside the underground arena that players could rent for practice matches. However, the higher rank the dueling ring was, the higher its rental fees were. In the dueling ring, as soon as Blue Phoenix and Ye Feng turned towards each other, the duel's countdown began. 5 seconds. 4 seconds. Just as the duel was about to begin, Phoenix Rain suddenly noticed that Zero Wing's other members weren't particularly interested in watching. On the contrary, they chatted carefree with each other. Underestimating my subordinate? Phoenix Rain could not help but laugh. Her laughter, however, contained a hint of frost. Blue Phoenix noticed the behavior of Zero Wing's members. Good. Very good. I intended to go easy and let your team leader last a few more seconds. Now I'll take him down in 5 seconds. Blue Phoenix inwardly swore. Blue Phoenix was a level 36 Tier 1 Elementalist. Meanwhile, her equipment consisted of level 35 Dark Gold and Fine Gold quality. The staff in her hand was even the level 30 Dark Gold ranked Dawn Scepter, a weapon she had obtained from a level 30 Hell Mode team dungeon. The Dark Gold ranked staff could even level with her to level 35. Overall, Blue Phoenix's magic damage was astonishing. Even her minor skills could inflict massive damage to an MT of the same level. Soon, the bell signaled the start of the duel. Die. With a low shout, she began drawing several lines of runes with great familiarity. Immediately, dozens of ice spears appeared around her and shot towards Ye Feng. Tier 1 Sure Kill spell Ice Madness. Every ice spear contained immense power. Players that came into contact with the spears would suffer a debuff, their movement speed reducing by 40% and attack speed reducing by 30%. Under Blue Phoenix's control, dozens of ice spears flew towards Ye Feng from all directions. The swordsman had nowhere to hide. Moreover, Blue Phoenix had already reached the Void Realm. She could perceive her surroundings and Ye Feng's actions like the back of her hand. With Ye Feng's slightest movements, she could immediately adjust the attack angle of her ice spears. However, this was not all. Suddenly, Blue Phoenix waved her hand, and 2 ice walls appeared in front of her, preventing Ye Feng from charging at her. Chapter 776, Triple Casting. Such swift and fierce techniques. She must be more than just an ordinary expert of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Aqua Rose, who watched from the stands, was slightly stunned. She had not expected Blue Phoenix to be so highly skilled. Magical classes and melee classes' combat methods were different. Magical classes had to focus on their familiarity and control of their spells. The more familiar a player was with a spell, the faster they could cast said spell. Once they were familiar with a spell to a certain extent, they only needed minimal concentration to cast it. It was even possible for players to skip chanting completely and cast their spells instantaneously. Meanwhile, the higher a player's control was of their spells, the more spells they could cast simultaneously. Also, high-tiered spells required more control to cast. Multicasting spells was like multitasking in real life. One might be able to handle one task with ease but would find 2 or more simultaneous tasks difficult. For magical class players without a certain level of control of their spells, it was impossible to cast multiple spells at once. Of course, there were some talented people who could multitask 2 or more tasks without training. If these people played a magical class, they could easily become experts. Even without a high degree of control, they could cast 2 or more spells simultaneously. One could overwhelm their enemies by multicasting spells, drowning them in a bombardment of magic. After all, evading one spell attack was already difficult, not to mention evading 2 or more. Being able to double cast spells would greatly increase a magical class player's variety of attack methods. They would not have to rely on monotone attacks that could be easily avoided. Naturally, this would increase their combat power by leaps and bounds. Currently, Aqua Rose could only handle double casting. Moreover, she could only cast 2 Tier 0 spells simultaneously. Even casting 1 Tier 0 and 1 Tier 1 spell simultaneously was beyond her. Yet, Blue Phoenix was capable of multicasting a Tier 1 Surekill spell and a Tier 0 spell. One could just imagine how superior Blue Phoenix was to her. Facing the dozens of incoming ice spears, Ye Feng ran, leaving behind multiple afterimages as he moved. It was far more difficult to hit a moving player with a spell. Not to mention, Blue Phoenix had to focus on controlling so many ice spears. It's useless. Blue Phoenix had long since seen Ye Feng's intentions and had taken countermeasures. However, Ye Feng was also an expert in the Void Realm. He could sense the dozens of ice spears' exact locations. The instant the ice spears were about to reach him, he sidestepped and allowed the dozens of spears to brush past. He then circled the ice walls and approached Blue Phoenix. Although the Void Realm allowed players to perceive their surroundings clearly, their range was not unlimited. Their maximum range was 20 yards. As long as he was over 20 yards away from Blue Phoenix, the Elementalist could not perceive his movements in such detail. It wouldn't be possible for her to change the trajectory of her ice spears in time. However, Blue Phoenix was no fool. While controlling Ice Madness, she also used the ice walls or instant-cast frost arrows to hinder Ye Feng's advance. Just as she was about to force Ye Feng into a corner, she summoned 4 ice walls, surrounding Ye Feng from all sides. The dozens of ice spears that had lain in wait descended on Ye Feng. Boom, boom, boom. Frost particles and white mist permeated the area. Is he dead? Blue Phoenix looked at the time. Only 3 seconds had passed since the battle had begun. Suddenly, Blue Phoenix felt that something was wrong. It felt as if a ferocious beast had just appeared behind her. Hurriedly, she activated Blink with a thought and appeared 15 yards away from her original position. Hua! Numerous blue sword lights blossomed Blue Phoenix's original location, slicing apart the afterimage she left behind. She had only been a thread away from Ye Feng's strikes. Her senses sure are sharp. Ye Feng sighed disappointedly. If he faced against any other class right now, he would have hit his opponent. Unfortunately, Blink could be cast with a single thought. The skill took effect instantaneously, allowing the user to appear 15 yards away. No matter how fast his sword was, it could not outmatch Blink. That was close. With her Void Realm perception, Blue Phoenix had realized what Ye Feng had done. So he still had such a move. Unfortunately, it is useless. I will end everything with this. Following which, Blue Phoenix waved her finger and used Ice Dragon's Roar. In the next moment, a powerful gush of cold air blasted towards Ye Feng. Just as Ye Feng was about to dodge to the left, 5 great fireballs appeared, flying at him. Double casting could allow magical class players to launch preemptive strikes, using the first attack to force the enemy to reveal a weak point, then attacking said weak point with the second spell. If ordinary players did not cope with the twofold attack properly, they would not even know how they died. Void Realm magical class experts sure are difficult to deal with. Having no better options, Ye Feng retreated backward, intending to avoid the 5 great fireballs before evading the Ice Dragon's Roar. However, 2 ice walls suddenly appeared behind Ye Feng, sealing his path of retreat. Impossible. Astonishment appeared on Aqua Rose's face. She can actually triple cast. Double casting was already Aqua Rose's limit. Even so, double casting had increased her combat power tremendously. Yet, Blue Phoenix could triple cast. She was simply inhuman. Despite both Ice Wall and Great Fireball being Tier 0 spells, when triple casted, they were far more powerful than a Tier 2 spell. Everyone finally realized just how frightening Blue Phoenix was. It was no wonder why she had confidently claimed that she could end the battle in 1 minute. Almost anyone would be helpless against her diverse attack method. A player's only option was to confront the incoming spells. However, against Blue Phoenix's high magic damage, just how many attacks of hers could one handle? Blue is taking this too seriously, Phoenix Rain sighed helplessly as she watched her comrade's performance. It seems that Blue will be participating in the competition. In the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Blue Phoenix had even suppressed Martial Dragon before he had awakened his domain. Needless to say, an unknown character from Zero Wing stood no chance against the Elementalist. Hence, she had told Ye Feng before that he would pass if he could survive a minute against Blue Phoenix. Now, however, it would seem that even 1 minute wasn't possible. With Blue Phoenix's current equipment, lasting 10 seconds against her serious efforts was impressive enough. Just as the Ice Dragon's roar was about to devour Ye Feng, he lightly swung Killing Ray at the torrent of cold air. Shio, 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 shio. Multiple streaks of blue lightning pierced the Ice Dragon's roar. 2 streaks of lightning scattered the pure white spell, following which another 2 streaks snaked their way towards Blue Phoenix. When Blue Phoenix saw the incoming lightning bolts, she hurriedly cast ice walls and flame explosion to defend herself. Only after breaking the 3rd ice wall did the lightning bolts vanish. Such high strength. Blue Phoenix could not help her shock as she glanced at the evaporated ice wall. However, before Blue Phoenix recovered from her shock, she saw Ye Feng swing Killing Ray once more. Hurricane. Immediately, countless wind blades flew towards Blue Phoenix, leaving no space for the elementalist to dodge. Blue Phoenix hurriedly used Blink again, escaping Hurricane's attack range. However, Ye Feng had already circled to her left and was only 20 yards away from her. Elementalists could cast Blink at most twice in a row, with each Blink charge having a cooldown of 12 seconds. Only a few seconds had passed since she used Blink the first time. Hence, her Blink was on cooldown and was unavailable. Do you think you can approach me just because I've used up my Blink? Blue Phoenix smiled disdainfully. Waving her staff, she began casting ice walls, one after another, to block Ye Feng's path. At the same time, she used ice spheres to both slow and damage Ye Feng. Slowed by evading the ice walls and ice spheres, as well as pinned down by her firepower, by the time Ye Feng could close in the elementalist, Blink would have finished its cooldown. By the time Ye Feng could approach her, her Blink would already be ready for use. Just as Blue Phoenix wondered how Ye Feng would evade her attacks, Ye Feng suddenly activated Defensive Blade and swung his sword at the ice wall before him. When one touched an ice wall, the spell would reduce their speed instantly. However, if one attacked an ice wall using Sword Aura, their speed would be unaffected. After activating Defensive Blade, Ye Feng's attack range extended to 15 yards. Pum. Suddenly, the blue sword aura shattered the ice wall before Ye Feng. He then charged past the broken ice wall. Don't even think about getting near me. Blue Phoenix cast more ice walls while bombarding Ye Feng with ice spears. However, the instant her ice walls appeared, Ye Feng's blue sword aura shattered them. The numerous ice spears Blue Phoenix fired shared a similar fate. When Ye Feng was within 15 yards of Blue Phoenix, he suddenly brandished Killing Ray at the elementalist and triggered the lightning effect. A streak of blue light shot across the dueling ring. Not only did the sword light pierce the blocking ice wall, but it also pierced Blue Phoenix's frost body. Numerous streaks of blue light then wrapped around Blue Phoenix, devouring her HP, dropping it to 0. Chapter 777, Times Are Different. When the white mist faded, the duel's outcome was on display above the ring. Victor, Ye Feng. Just who is he? Shock and suspicion filled Phoenix Rain's eyes, her expression growing somewhat somber. She was very familiar with Blue Phoenix's basic attributes. The elementalist definitely ranked at the very top of God's domain in this aspect. Yet, Ye Feng had surpassed Blue Phoenix. An elementalist's ice wall was not easily destroyed. Even a berserker of equal strength couldn't shatter an ice wall with 2 or 3 hits. Even if the berserker were slightly stronger, it was impossible to destroy an ice wall with a single hit. However, Ye Feng's attributes still wasn't the most shocking aspect. What truly shocked her was his combat realm. Void realm experts were rare. Yet, a little guild like Zero Wing actually had 2 such experts. Suddenly, Phoenix Rain realized that her knowledge of Zero Wing was somewhat lacking. Ha! Big brother Ye Feng has won. Violet Cloud cheered. Someone had even boasted that they could end the battle in 1 minute. It seems that it was true. Blackie laughed. After her defeat, Blue Phoenix was dazed for quite some time. When she looked at the name displayed above the dueling ring, then looked at the young man standing before her, a bitter feeling arose in her heart. The battle had lasted less than 10 seconds. This was the first time she had lost so miserably after her training. Moreover, Ye Feng did not seem to be particularly old. They should be roughly the same age. The bitter feeling of rivalry bloomed in Blue Phoenix's heart. In the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, she stood out among the other talents. Despite Martial Dragon being stronger than her, she had never once held him in any regard. After all, Martial Dragon was several years older than she was. She was younger and had more potential. As long as she was given enough time, she would, sooner or later, awaken her domain as well and become one of the true experts at the peak of God's domain. Yet now, an expert who was around the same age but significantly stronger had appeared. What infuriated Blue Phoenix the most was that Ye Feng was only a Void Realm expert, not someone with a domain. Despite the fact that they had reached the same combat realm, he had beaten her so ruthlessly. How could she accept this outcome? "You're Ye Feng, right?" Blue Phoenix marched up to Ye Feng, scanning the young man's appearance and committing it to memory. "MHM." Ye Feng nodded as he wondered about Blue Phoenix's odd, analyzing gaze. "I'll remember it. My name is Blue Phoenix. You must remember it. This name will surpass yours in the future." After saying so, Blue Phoenix turned and left the dueling ring. Ye Feng laughed in response to Blue Phoenix's declaration. He had never thought the woman would have such an abrupt personality. However, this trait had allowed Blue Phoenix to improve herself continuously and become one of the top few experts in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. In the future she would grow ridiculously strong, eventually becoming a Tier 6 mage god, an existence that countless people looked up to. In Ye Feng's previous life, the Tier 6 goal had been far out of his reach. Now, however, he possessed the ability to contend with a future, god-ranked expert. After this fight, Ye Feng's mentality had shifted slightly. Back then he had struggled at the very bottom. Now, however, God's domain's peak was already within his reach. "Surpass me?" Ye Feng smirked at the departing elementalist. Silently he swore, "Those who I have surpassed will only find the gap between us widening." "Phoenix Pavilion Master, do you still have qualms with my participation?" Ye Feng asked as he turned to Phoenix Rain. To avoid exposing his identity as Black Flame, not only had Ye Feng altered his level and the appearance of his equipment using the demon mask, but he had also kept many of his skills hidden, using only a few basic swordsman techniques. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to discover his secret. Moreover, Ye Feng's and Black Flame's auras were greatly different from each other. Ye Feng's state was his natural state. He kept Ye Feng's aura sheathed as plain as water, and one would easily mistake him as a passerby. After donning the guise of Black Flame, however, he became more flamboyant. Black Flame was like an unsheathed sword, a powerful deterring force. Wherever he went, he was the center of attraction. He felt absolute to others. I never thought that guild leader Black Flame would have someone so powerful. Even in the battle in the Stoneclaw Mountains, you never made an appearance. It seems that Zero Wing really knows how to hide its strength. Guild leader Black Flame has even fooled me, Phoenix Rain said after thoroughly re-evaluating Ye Feng. Although she suspected that Black Flame was Ye Feng, their auras were vastly different. Moreover, she had even used a super advanced identification skill that could see through disguises. Even the demon mask could not hide the truth from her skill. However, even with her identification skill, Ye Feng's ID displayed as Ye Feng, not Black Flame. This assured Phoenix Rain that they were not the same person. The only thing she discovered was that Ye Feng had altered his level. She had never imagined that Ye Feng was actually level 39, 3 levels higher than herself. Since he was 3 levels higher, there would naturally be a significant gap in terms of attributes. This explained why Blue Phoenix was no match for Ye Feng. "Phoenix Pavilion Master, it's getting late. If we don't enter the venue now, the organizer will most likely declare a forfeit," Ye Feng said as he looked at the time. They had a little over 10 minutes remaining. They would be just in time if they hurried over immediately. As for whether or not Phoenix Rain had discovered his identity, Ye Feng could easily tell by the woman's behavior that his truth was safe. It was obvious that Phoenix Rain had failed to uncover his secret. Moreover, nobody would assume that Zero Wing's almighty guild leader was just a fake identity, while Ye Feng was his true identity. Even if someone did suspect him of being Black Flame and had used an advanced identification skill on him, they would only discover the identity of Ye Feng. Even when he wore the guise of Black Flame, his secret was still safe. He always wore a black cloak while acting as Black Flame. Even an advanced identification skill could not uncover his information. With his identity hidden, outsiders would think that there were 2 great swordsman experts in Zero Wing. With that assumption, even a first-rate guild would grow wary of Zero Wing like Phoenix Rain was now. "Alright. I'll let you handle the rest. I hope that team leader Ye Feng to bring me the good news of victory." Phoenix Rain smiled sweetly. She no longer treated Ye Feng with indifference. On the contrary, she was surprised and pleased. With Ye Feng's skills, the battle team's overall strength could not be underestimated. Moreover, with Ye Feng's presence, everyone watching the competition would focus on Zero Wing. Nobody would bother with her, the battle team's backer. This way she could earn a fortune in secret. Following which, Ye Feng led Aqua Rose and the others to the underground arena's main venue. Big Sis Rain, I'm sorry. I lost to Ye Feng. After Ye Feng and the others left, Blue Phoenix was racked by guilt. Despite Phoenix Rain having the best resources the guild possessed, she still suffered defeat. Foolish girl, it was only natural that you lost. Do you know what level he is right now? Phoenix Rain chuckled softly, not blaming Blue Phoenix at all. Blue Phoenix shook her head in response. He's level 39. Phoenix Raid announced. Even the old monsters from super guilds have not reached that level yet. As for his weapons and equipment, even I don't know what he's wearing. Although his items looked plain and simple, it is clear that he had disguised them. Unfortunately, my identification skills cannot see through the disguise. Meanwhile, the fact that his attributes are far superior to yours shows that his weapons and equipment are extraordinary. It is especially true for those swords. I suspect they might even be epic weapons. Chapter 778, Peak of God's Domain. Although Phoenix Rain had not been loud, her words had stunned Blue Phoenix. Epic weapons. Currently these items were practically legends. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion only had one epic item thus far. However, it was not a weapon. Rather, they had a pair of cloth armor gloves. This epic ranked gloves had caused a fight between the Phoenix Pavilion and Heavenly Dragon Pavilion. Both pavilions had tried to claim the gloves for themselves. In the end, however, the Great Pavilion Master had given the gloves to Phoenix Rain. Due to this, Nine Dragons Emperor of the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion was furious. However, Nine Dragons Emperor could not do anything about the decision because he wasn't a magical class. On the other hand, Phoenix Rain was an elementalist. The epic ranked gloves were also perfectly suited for an elementalist. To gain the greatest benefit, the gloves went to Phoenix Rain. When Blue Phoenix saw the gloves' basic attributes, she realized that the gloves were significantly stronger than dark gold equipment. Furthermore, the epic equipment increased certain basic attributes by a fixed percentage. Although the increase only ranged between 10% and 15%, to a top-tier expert with over 500 points in their main attribute, a 10% increase was a significant jump. The epic-ranked gloves also had powerful skills. The gloves alone increased Phoenix Rain's combat power by nearly 30%. If an epic item was so effective, how powerful were epic weapons? Just thinking about it made Blue Phoenix shiver in fear. The fact that Ye Feng had sliced apart her ice walls with a single slash spoke volumes of his weapon's strength. However, this revelation also confused Blue Phoenix. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had only managed to obtain a single piece of epic equipment after a lot of struggling. How did a small guild like Zero Wing manage to obtain two epic weapons? It seems Zero Wing isn't as simple as we thought. Neither the Star Alliance or the Flower of Seven Sins lost to Zero Wing without reason. In any case, have more people watch Zero Wing. I keep feeling that Black Flame is shrouded in mystery, Phoenix Rain sternly commanded her subordinate after pondering for some time. I understand. I'll have the intelligence department start a new, thorough investigation on Zero Wing. This was the third time Blue Phoenix had seen Phoenix Rain so serious. She believed that Phoenix Rain overestimated Zero Wing. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was a super first-rate guild. Even if Zero Wing rose at a tremendous pace, it was still 10 years too early for it to become anything more than a first-rate guild. The virtual gaming world had been around for hundreds of years. Throughout its history, many upstart guilds had become first-rate guilds through accomplishments in a single game. However, no upstart guild had ever surpassed first-rate guilds through just a single game. Beyond that, Zero Wing had no particular backing. A sea of people filled the underground arena's main venue. There were two modes of combat in the underground arena. The first was the system-acknowledged ranking matches held in the basic, advanced, and special areas. The second mode was a zero-restriction match. For zero-restriction matches, players could fight special area experts without requiring combat results in the underground arena. However, the size of the venues and rules were different. Even the fees were different. The basic venue for zero-restriction matches could hold far more people than that of the ranking matches. Each venue could hold roughly 500 people. If one wanted to reserve the venue, each day cost 3 gold. Inside the venue, players could fight however they wished. There were no restrictions to the number of fights that could be held. As for the advanced venue, it could hold 3,000 people. Reserving it for the day cost 10 gold. The special venue could hold 20,000 people, and reserving it for a day cost 100 gold. Even large guild could not afford to reserve the special venue. The main venue towered above the special venue. The number of people the main venue could hold depended on the city's rank. A kingdom's main venue could hold roughly 50,000 people. An empire's main venue could hold roughly 70,000 to 80,000 people. The main venue of the 4 great empires' underground arenas could hold roughly 100,000 people. Aside from accommodating larger crowds, the greatest difference between zero-restriction matches and ranking matches was the size of the dueling rings. In basic venues, the dueling rings there could support one-on-one matches. The dueling rings of advanced venues could support 3-on-3 matches at most. Special venues could hold 10-on-10 matches. Lastly, main venues could hold 100-on-100 matches. In the underground arena, the spectator stands offered the full view of the dueling ring. One could observe the battlefield from whichever angle they desired. Battles involving hundreds of players frequently occurred across God's domain. However, it was difficult to observe these battles without being dragged into the fray. However, that would not happen in the underground arena. Players could observe the battles in the dueling rings closely. Hence, players favored the underground arena. The various large guilds would also often rehearse 100-man team battles here. However, unlike the other venues, each underground arena only possessed one main venue. Moreover, the rental fee was very expensive. Renting out the main venue in White River City cost more than 300 gold. As for the 4 great empires, their main venues cost 600 gold to rent each day. Through Zero Wing and the candlelight trading firm, Ye Feng only raked in roughly 1,000 gold of profit each day. Yet it cost 600 gold to rent the main venue. Meanwhile, such competitions occurred in the 4 great empires' underground arenas every day. The wealth of the Dark Arena's organizer was obvious. Neither the participating players, nor the audience members needed to pay an entry fee. Of course, they all required an invitation to enter. No one could enter the main venue without one. However, even without charging an entrance fee, the Dark Arena's organizer still made an immense profit. The organizer charged a 1% processing fee for all winning bets in the Dark Arena. Although 1% might not seem much to whoever won the bet, only those of extraordinary status were invited to watch the battles. Even 1% was an extraordinary amount of money. Furthermore, there were a lot of people betting on the fights. The organizer earned far more than just 600 gold each day. With so much profit at stake, it was natural that the position of the Dark Arena's organizer was not permanent. Initially, one would secure the position by influence. Later they secured it with strength. Why were the various major corporations pushing their battle teams to secure victory with every match? They pushed because only the top few ranking battle teams could qualify to challenge the Dark Arena's organizer. Hence, the qualifications to form a Dark Arena battle team were precious. When Ye Feng learned that Phoenix Rain had qualified to send a battle team to the Dark Arena, he had been shocked. There are so many people here. After Blackie entered the main venue, the scene had left him awestruck. The competition venue, which could accommodate 100,000 players, was about 20% full. These people have extraordinary statuses. Most likely, even the most inferior among them are upper echelons of first-rate guilds, Aqua Rose stated. When she swept a glance over the audience members, she noticed several upper echelons from first-rate guilds. She even spotted the guild leaders of several first-rate guilds. It's not just the upper echelons of the first-rate guilds in God's domain. Many famous experts have been invited as well. In addition, the representatives from many major corporations have received invites. However, the Dark Arena is lively today, Ye Feng explained slowly. He had visited the Dark Arena many times in his previous life. Back then, however, he had been over level 100. By then, many people had discovered the Dark Arena. Moreover, the battles he had watched had usually been between relatively skilled battle teams. Even then, the venues were only about 30% full. Currently, the Dark Arena was still new, only emerging recently. An occupancy rate of 20% was already considerably high. As staff members guided Ye Feng and his team into the dueling ring, their appearance had elicited a small cry from a corner of the audience stands. "Isn't that Ye Feng?" Zhao Yueru exclaimed as she rubbed her eyes, thinking they had fooled her. However, no matter how she stared, the man was undoubtedly Ye Feng. Why is he here? Chapter 779 E0 Wing's True Appearance. Hearing Zhao Yueru's shriek, Gentle Snow, who sat beside her in silver armor, could not help but turn to look. This, Gentle Snow was slightly surprised as well. Even in Star Moon Kingdom, Ye Feng unknown to the public. However, Gentle Snow knew very well that if not for Ye Feng's help, it would have been impossible for her to defeat Chao Qinghua. One could say that Ye Feng was quite strong. However, being strong and being able to participate in the Dark Arena were entirely different things. After not encountering Ye Feng for a short time, the man had become one of the Dark Arena's participants. This sudden development was truly shocking. Just what kind of place was the Dark Arena? It was a hub for the top powers in God's domain. Even the guild leader of a second-rate guild was not qualified to receive an invitation. Only first-rate guilds would have the opportunity to watch the matches here. Although Zero Wing had risen to prominence in Star Moon Kingdom, and it was as strong as a first-rate guild, it was still an unknown existence to the majority of God's domain. After all, Star Moon Kingdom was only one of the many kingdoms in God's domain. Even if the guild received an invite to the Dark Arena, it shouldn't have happened for another several months. Yet Ye Feng had joined a battle team. Joining a battle team required far more than joining the audience. Snow, look, it's not just Ye Feng. Zero Wing's upper echelons are here too. Zhao Yueru quickly noticed Aqua Rose and the others, who followed She Feng closely. During the war in the Stoneclaw Mountains, Zero Wing's upper echelons had allowed the various large guilds to gain a new understanding of their strength. Although their victory against the Flower of Seven Sins mainly attributed to Black Flame's uncontrolled power, the fact that they had lasted so long against the assassins and suffered so few losses was astounding. It was especially true for Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, and Violet Cloud. These three women had stood against the Flowers' party leaders without assistance. They were extraordinarily strong. After the war, Gentle Snow had even asked for a copy of the battle video. Although Gentle Snow knew that it was not appropriate to ask for the favor, she was very keen to know the process of that battle. After all, the battle between the Flower of Seven Sins and Zero Wing's upper echelons had been a crucial turning point in the war. At the same time, that team battle had been the most intense in Star Moon Kingdom so far. How could anybody resist watching such a battle? 4 experts wanting to improve on their combat techniques, the recording of that battle was a priceless treasure. Hence, Gentle Snow had specifically asked She Feng for a copy. Black Flame. Gentle Snow could not help but smile bitterly as she watched the Azura battle team, which consisted only of Zero Wing's members. She could not help the feeling that Black Flame had played her for a fool. She had not viewed Zero Wing as particularly powerful in the past. However, what was the truth? Gentle Snow even began to suspect if Black Flame had been putting up an act all along and was secretly laughing at everything she did. The rights to send a battle team into the Dark Arena were not easy to obtain. Without a powerful background, the various international corporations would not bother acknowledging Zero Wing. Yet, Zero Wing was here with a battle team consisting fully of its own members in the Dark Arena. This showed that Zero Wing did not lack a background. Gentle Snow finally realized why Zero Wing dared to pick a fight with Open Source Corporation. While Gentle Snow sighed, depression overwhelmed another corner of the spectator stands. Guild leader, they are. Purple Eye's eyes nearly fell out of her sockets when she saw Zero Wing's members enter the dueling ring. It would have been nothing if only 1 or 2 Zero Wing members were on the battle team. However, every slot of that battle team belonged to a Zero Wing member. That damned exemplary Willow. And damn the elders who can think of nothing but profit. Every one of them should go to hell. Galaxy Past cursed as he paled. At this point he had no idea what to say. They've doomed the Star Alliance. He had never considered Black Flame to be an irrational man. He had reasons to be confident if he actually dared to provoke Open Source Corporation's exemplary Willow. The situation should have stayed between exemplary Willow and Black Flame. However, due to those elders, the Star Alliance had gotten mixed up in a fight between these titanic forces. Now, not only had the Star Alliance become cannon fodder, but it had also angered Zero Wing. Furthermore, exemplary Willow had up and left after the Star Alliance's defeat. However, the Star Alliance could not leave. Purple Eye's hatred towards exemplary Willow and the guild elders also ran deep. The Star Alliance was her home. Now that the Star Alliance had provoked Zero Wing, it was only a matter of time before the alliance was annihilated. However, that was not the most crucial issue. The Star Alliance had built its main base of operations in Starmoon Kingdom. If they moved their main base to another country, it would be extremely difficult to compete with the other guilds there. It's okay. With this information, it's not too late to turn things around. After this competition is over, we will immediately hold a meeting with our highest members. At this moment, Galaxy Pass truly regretted letting Exemplary Willow finance the Star Alliance. In return for a little funding, they had provoked a power that they should have left alone. Are we going to return right now? Purple Eye asked curiously. Since we're already here, we can't leave empty-handed. Although the Glorious Lions battle team has won against 2 strong battle teams in a row, Zero Wings upper echelons are capable of taking down the Flower of Seven Sins. With Zero Wings combat power, there is a 60% chance that they will win, Galaxy Pass said, bitterness blooming in his heart. To learn just how powerful Zero Wing was, he had sacrificed 80% of the guild's elite members. God forbid, if he did not earn back some of his losses today. I'll place a bet right away. When Purple Eye heard Galaxy Pass's words, she realized something. Even super guilds feared the Flower of Seven Sins. Since Zero Wing could defeat those assassins, they should have no trouble defeating the Glorious Lions battle team. At the same time, Gentle Snow's people were also frantically placing bets, wagering every rare material and top-tier equipment they had with them on the Azura battle team. Snow, I've already bet all of the materials I brought. Although Zhao Yueru somewhat hated Ye Feng, she could not help but acknowledge the man's strength. In Zero Wing, only Black Flame was stronger. Hence, the possibility of the Azura battle team obtaining victory was very high. Since they knew that there was an extremely high chance for the Azura battle team winning, they could not miss this chance to make a profit. I even wagered my staff. There really isn't anything else I can bet. Notify Old Sue to bring as many rare materials as he can immediately, Gentle Snow said. She could not help but laugh as she watched her money-grubbing friend. While the audience placed their bets, the Glorious Lions and Azura battle team had arrived at the center of the battlefield. Brother Ye Feng, long time no see, Everlasting War greeted Shi Feng. I never thought we would meet again under such circumstances. He had long since acknowledged Ye Feng's strength. Unfortunately, Hua Qiushui had her own considerations. I'm surprised as well. What would you like to bet this time? Shi Feng could see Everlasting War's helplessness and guilt. However, he was quite pleased that he had rejected the Glorious Lions. Otherwise, where would he have found the opportunity to allow Zero Wing's upper echelons to participate in such a competition? Moreover, he had full authority over the battle team. This was an opportunity he could never have dreamed of in his previous life. As the battle team's representative, he could propose a bet with their opponent. As for the winnings they earned from the audience's bets, the system was responsible for distributing them. We don't really care. What do you wish to bet? Everlasting War laughed. There was nothing in God's domain that they did not possess. Hence, they did not particularly care what they gambled. Moreover, Everlasting War was confident that the Glorious Lions would win this match. Since you do not care, I won't be courteous. Shi Feng had never thought that Everlasting War was so wealthy to dismiss profit. He relaxed and said, let's bet 40 logs of primal emerald wood, 24 soul cultivating stones, 30,000 magic crystals, and 1,000 pieces of level 30 and above dark gold equipment. How about it? Chapter 780 Who Wager. Before the match began, the audience began to place their bets. Everyone came to the dark arena for 2 reasons. The first was to earn rare materials and top-tier equipment. The second was to watch an exciting battle. As soon as the 2 battle teams stepped into the dueling ring, everyone began searching for information regarding the team members and placing their bets based on what they found. The audience was shocked by what they found. Why does this Azura battle team consist of members from a small guild? Just who established the Azura battle team? Have they lost their mind? Aside from Aqua Rose, who has some fame, the other members are nobodies. So what if they're somewhat famous in Starmoon Kingdom? Do they think they can win the competition with such low standards? Are they taking the dark arena seriously? Or can the Azura battle team not afford to hire even a few famous experts? With such a battle team, the Glorious Lions would find it hard to lose even if they wanted to. It seems the Glorious Lions will win their 3rd match in a row. Once the audience members read what information had been collected on Zero Wing, they couldn't believe their own eyes. Although Zero Wing was not weak, it was not particularly strong either. Black Flame was the only notable figure in the guild. However, there was no sign of Black Flame. Moreover, none of the members had even set foot into the realms of refinement. Their equipment might rank at the top in their kingdom, but what did that matter in the Dark Arena? The Dark Arena was the hub for God's domain's top powers. Top-tier equipment in a kingdom was nothing in this place. One could see this much just by looking at Glorious Lion's leader, Everlasting War. Everlasting War wore a complete level 35 fine gold set equipment, the current best set equipment in God's domain. It was significantly stronger than a level 30 dark gold set equipment. Everything else the man wore was level 35 dark gold equipment as well. He was also fully equipped with tier 3 gemstones. As for Zero Wing's members, they had not replaced their equipment since level 30. They were no match for Everlasting War. They dare call themselves Azura with such members? This is a joke. If Black Flame made an appearance, the show might be interesting, but it seems that Black Flame has allowed his guild members to venture off on their own. Bet on the Glorious Lions. Although many will bet on them as well, a small profit is still profit. Many among the audience could not help but sigh with disappointment at the lost chance to make a fortune. However, Gentle Snow's excitement grew as she watched this development. Sure enough, none of them know about that incident. Zhao Yueru giggled as she watched the other audience members place their bets on the Glorious Lions. Alright, stop laughing. We only discovered it by coincidence. Gentle Snow strictly reprimanded her companion. Although plenty of information about the war in the Stoneclaw Mountains had leaked, most of this information came from independent players who had watched from afar. At such a great distance, nobody had been able to get a clear recording of the apex battle between Zero Wing and the Flower of Seven Sins. Moreover, only a few of the Star Alliance's upper echelons knew about the Flower of Seven Sins striking out against Zero Wing. The other guilds had no idea about the assassination attempts. They only knew that the Star Alliance had hired experts to deal with Zero Wing's upper echelons. As for the secret pavilion, they would not be so foolish as to share a great secret. What the secret pavilion chose to reveal confirmed that Zero Wing's upper echelons had powerful basic attributes. However, they did not reveal any information about the experts they had faced. Although Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, and Aqua Rose had yet to become Refinement Realm experts, they could exert enough combat power to face down Flowing Water Realm experts. Furthermore, the Azura Battle Team had Ye Feng. Overall, the Azura Battle Team had 4 experts who could rival Flowing Water Realm experts. The other members were strong enough to contend with Refinement Realm experts. To put it simply, it would not be difficult for the Azura Battle Team to secure victory against the Glorious Lions. It was a pity that Black Flame was not here. Otherwise, the Azura Battle Team might have won this competition without question. Auntie Hua, you must avenge me. Exemplary Willow immediately burst with anger when she saw that every member of the Azura Battle Team was from Zero Wing. She had lost quite a bit of money in the last war. To make matters worse, she had failed to annihilate Zero Wing. She had never imagined the despicable guild would appear before her once more. Ichem? Did this battle team provoke you somehow? Hua Qiushui asked, laughing. Yes. They caused me to lose a lot of money. Auntie Hua, since the Glorious Lions battle team is yours, do you think you can raise the wager and make them suffer? Exemplary Willow gnashed her teeth as she glared at the Azura battle team. Alright. However, both sides have to accept the wager first. If the other side refuses, I can't do anything about it. But rest assured, your Auntie Hua will definitely make them pay. Hua Qiushui nodded. She had nothing against the Azura battle team. However, she was not fond of the man known as Ye Feng. Not only had he refused to participate in her audition, but he had also appeared before her as the leader of the Azura battle team. Society's inner circle was only so big. If Ye Feng won this competition and others learned of their history, she would be a laughingstock. Now that even Lu Shirshir asked her to avenge the loss the girl had suffered, she could use this opportunity to teach Ye Feng a lesson. In the dueling ring. What did you say? Everlasting War asked again. The other Glorious Lions members were similarly stunned by Shifeng's offer, thinking that they had heard wrong. Both primal emerald wood and soul cultivating stones were necessary materials to construct a stable. The various large guilds in God's domain were keeping a tight hold on their stocks, causing the prices to skyrocket. For example, the primal emerald wood had cost 40 gold per log not too long ago. Each log was already worth as much as a piece of dark gold equipment. Now, however, each log cost 60 gold. As for the soul cultivating stone, each stone originally sold for 30 gold. Now no one would part with theirs even for 50 gold. These two materials had become strategic resources for guilds. Even in the dark arena, not many were willing to wager these items. After all, a stable was simply too important to a guild. It was far more valuable than any of the current dark gold weapons and equipment. Yet, Ye Feng wanted to gamble 40 logs of primal emerald wood and 24 soul cultivating stones. Even Everlasting War did not have the authority to approve of such a large bet. Furthermore, the swordsman also wanted 30,000 magic crystals and 1,000 pieces of level 30 and above dark gold equipment. Even their total profits from the previous two matches were not worth so much. 40 logs of primal emerald wood, 24 soul cultivating stones, 30,000 magic crystals, and 1,000 pieces of level 30 and above dark gold equipment. What do you think, Brother Everlasting? If you think the wager is too low, we can increase it further, Ye Feng repeated. Zero Wing's recent expansion had been massive. While the guild did not lack mysterious iron and secret silver equipment, there was a shortage of top-tier equipment. Lately, Zero Wing's main force had been busy dealing with other matters and had not raided any dungeons. In addition to the recent expansion, Zero Wing needed level 30 dark gold equipment. If he could obtain 1,000 pieces of level 30 dark gold equipment from this match, it would make up for the guild's shortage. Everlasting War was rendered speechless. Previously he had boasted that he did not care what they bet. He had never dreamed that Ye Feng would offer such an expensive wager. There was no doubt that Ye Feng could afford this gamble. After all, if either side did not have the ability to pay up, the system would not allow the battle to begin. Hence, Ye Feng had no reason to lie. Moreover, he was not that kind of person. Brother Ye Feng, please wait a moment. I don't have the authority to agree to such a large wager. I need to ask my superior. For now, Everlasting War could only offer an excuse. Following which, he contacted Hua Qiushui and reported the situation honestly. Director Hua, the Azura battle team has offered the wager. Please take a look. If this is not enough, they are willing to increase the bet. When Hua Qiushui saw Ye Feng's wager, her complexion darkened. Auntie Hua, are you not feeling well? Exemplary Willow asked curiously when she saw Hua Qiushui's expression. Chapter 781, Hidden Strength. Hua Qiushui waved off Exemplary Willow's question and said, "It's nothing. Watch your Auntie Hua avenge your losses." Thank you, Auntie Hua. Exemplary Willow smiled sweetly, her mood brightening. Following which, Hua Qiushui contacted Everlasting War and asked in a low tone, "Everlasting, what is your opinion on the Azura battle team's strength?" My opinion? Everlasting War wondered why Hua Qiushui asked such a question. The Azura battle team is very strong. A few of its members feel like intense threats. As for the team leader Ye Feng, he is a refinement realm expert. However, based on our team's strength, winning should not be a problem. There were a total of 5 matches in this competition. 2 were 1-on-1s, 1 was a 2-on-2 and 2 were 3-on-3s. To secure victory, a battle team only needed to win 3 matches. Even if a battle team had an invincible expert, at most the team would win 1 match, not the competition. Furthermore, Ye Feng was not invincible. Everlasting War was 60% certain of defeating Ye Feng. There should not be a problem? Hua Qiushui's expression was stern. Even for her, this was a very large wager. If the Azura battle team's employer wasn't a fool, then they must be absolutely confident of their team. Although Hua Qiushui trusted Everlasting War's estimation, she did not think that the Azura battle team's employer would bet on luck. A fool like that would never make it to a place like this. Everlasting, do what you need to. We're sending in Team 2. After giving it some thought, Hua Qiushui made up her mind. Are we really going to mobilize Team 2? Everlasting War was shocked. Currently, we still have quite a few matches to win before we can challenge the organizer. Is mobilizing Team 2 necessary? If we reveal our strength too soon, it would only make it easier for our future opponents to learn our weaknesses. 9 people had been chosen during the Glorious Lions audition. Including Everlasting War, they formed a full battle team. Afterward, however, Everlasting War learned that those 9 members were only reserves. The battle team's official members had long since been decided. Only Hua Qiushui had never mentioned that before the audition. This had been the Glorious Lions battle team's secret. So far, he had only been introduced to 2 of the other 9 official members. However, both of these people were strong enough to frighten Everlasting War. When the audition members learned that they were merely reserve members, they were not pleased. As a result, the 9 of them had fought the 2 official members in a team battle. In the end, victory had belonged to the 2 official members. Neither had even lost any HP throughout the battle. The 9 audition members had no choice but to admit their defeat. The difference in their strengths was too massive. Hence, the Glorious Lions battle team's reserve members formed Team 1, while Team 2 consisted of the battle team's official members. Even Everlasting War had no idea where Hua Qiushui had found these experts. Meanwhile, Everlasting War was only Team 2's vice leader. As for the mysterious official leader, even now, Everlasting War had yet to him. However, whenever he saw Hua Qiushui converse with that person, the woman would show respect. Her voice carried none of the commanding tone it usually had when she spoke to him. The wager is too big to risk. Notify the organizer. The competition has not begun yet, so there should be no issues in making a last-minute change to our roster, Hua Qiushui demanded. In truth, aside from worrying that the Azura battle team hid its strength, Hua Qiushui wanted to show Ye Feng that the audition members were merely part of a reserve team. They were minor characters she used to deceive her enemies. I understand. Everlasting War sighed helplessly. He had looked forward to an intense match against the Azura battle team. Now, however, that was no longer possible. The members of Team 1 were capable of defeating the Azura battle team. However, there was a massive gap between Team 1 and Team 2. The Azura battle team had no hopes of winning against Team 2. After the Glorious Lions battle team and the Azura battle team confirmed their bets and registered their participating members, a commotion ripped through the main venue. What is this? Why did the Glorious Lions swap out their members? Wait, the team's leader, Everlasting War, is still on the team. Only the other members have been replaced. Don't tell me they're complaining that the Azura battle team is too weak and are trying to up the risk of the competition. The audience fell into a heated discussion. Although last-minute replacements frequently occurred in the Dark Arena, there had never been a full team replacement, excluding the leader. Something's not right. Gentle Snow's expression suddenly turned grim. Snow, what's going on? Zhao Yueru asked curiously. The Glorious Lions aren't replacing their stronger members with weaker ones. They're replacing their weaker members with stronger ones. Gentle Snow said seriously. I had never imagined that the Glorious Lions would have hidden their strength so deeply. They kept their true strength hidden all this time. The Azura battle team is in danger. Snow, how do you know that the Glorious Lions have replaced their weaker team with a stronger one? Their levels are mostly the same. Zhao Yueru looked at the levels of the new members. The highest among them was level 36, while the lowest was level 35. They were not much stronger than the previous team. Moreover, she had never seen any of the new members before. They were not particularly famous in the virtual gaming world. It's not surprising that you don't know them. I have only encountered a few of these people by chance, Gentle Snow said, smiling bitterly. That tanned, skinny level 36 assassin named Long Rainbow defeated 4 of Underworld's 7 ghosts by himself in the Divine Battlefield. He is slightly stronger than Great Ghost, the 7 ghosts' #1 expert. That level 36 blue-armored swordsman named Blood Sun defeated War Wolf and Soaring Snake by himself in the Divine Battlefield as well. She had only discovered this information from her spies in Underworld. Currently, Underworld sided with Chao Qinghua. Naturally, she had been forced to take her own countermeasures. These incidents had flabbergasted Underworld's upper echelons. Nobody could have imagined that their top experts, who had gone into the Divine Battlefield to grind, would have been hunted for points. Gentle Snow had been quite pleased when she heard the news. She never imagined that someone other than Black Flame would cause so much trouble for Underworld. Now, however, she felt no joy at all. That can't be true, right? Since when have the Glorious Lions been so strong? Zhao Yueru knew plenty about Underworld's 7 ghosts. She also remembered War Wolf's strength. The man had played with Fierce Snake, one of Ouroboros's 12 apostles, like a toy. Even Zhao Yueru feared the man's strength. Yet, someone had defeated such a powerful expert despite him combining his strength with Soaring Snakes, the 12 apostles' #1 expert. Like Gentle Snow, Phoenix Rain, who sat comfortably in a VIP room, frowned deeply. Damn it! Why is he here? Phoenix Rain glared at the Glorious Lion's new leader, complaining indignantly, Do the battle wolves not care about their reputation? Chapter 782, Fame Sword Bonfire. Big Sis Rain? Blue Phoenix was confused. This was the first time she had seen Phoenix Rain grow so angry. In her eyes, Phoenix Rain was a lofty queen. She was always calm and dignified. Even when competing with a super guild over an item, she spoke and smiled peacefully. Now, however, she was clearly anxious. It was simply inconceivable. Phoenix Rain had also realized that she had lost her composure. Smiling bitterly, she explained, Ye Feng's group is doomed. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have bet so much on the Azura battle team. Big Sis Rain, is that man particularly powerful? Blue Phoenix watched the middle-aged man who now led the Glorious Lions. Appearance-wise, this middle-aged man had a handsome face, a strong body and sharp eyes that resembled an eagle's. He wore silver-black armor and carried a flame-red greatsword. He looked like a towering war god. After analyzing the man just for a short moment, Blue Phoenix suddenly noticed that the man's gaze shifted towards her as if he noticed her watching him. Blue Phoenix was afraid. Not only was she far from the dueling ring, but she was also in a VIP room. The players in the dueling ring should not be able to see inside the VIP rooms at all. Blue, you understand now, right? Anger filled Phoenix Rain's eyes as she glared at the new team leader. Big Sis Rain, who is that man? Why haven't I heard of someone with so much power? Blue Phoenix asked as she realized just how powerful the middle-aged man was, shock setting in. Logically, such monster-level characters should disdain taking part in such competitions, yet here one was. It was no wonder why Phoenix Rain had become so enraged. Although you've never met him before, you should have heard his name, Phoenix Rain said as she shook her head. He is one of the 4 great wolf kings of the battle wolves, Sirius. That's him? Blue Phoenix immediately understood Phoenix Rain's anger. The Battle Wolves was a super guild that had existed for over 100 years. The guild's 4 great wolf kings had shaken the virtual gaming world with their fame for many years now and were mainly responsible for pushing the Battle Wolves to the peak of the virtual gaming world. Only 8 years ago, the 4 great wolf kings had removed themselves from the public eye. No one had heard any news about the wolf kings after that. For those who remember them, however, the names of the 4 great wolf kings still resounded like thunder in their ears. Now, an old monster had arrived to participate in a competition between the younger generation. This was harassment. Big Sis Rain, why don't we notify Ye Feng and tell him about this? Although Blue Phoenix had lost to Ye Feng, at the end of the day, they were on the same side. Now that Sirius had joined the competition, they could only send cannon fodder at him, losing the match intentionally and focusing on the other matches. No need. Ye Feng is no fool. He can tell how powerful Sirius is. I don't think he'll try to face Sirius head-on, Phoenix Rain said. However, Sirius isn't the only one to watch out for. There are several other members who are extremely dangerous as well. Even if Ye Feng chooses the right members for the matchups, this will be a hard battle. Are we going to lose our first competition? Blue Phoenix was frustrated. She wished she was a part of the battle team's roster. They might even have a chance at victory. However, now that the competition roster had been set, no further changes were allowed. If you lose, you lose. Victory and defeat are common on the battlefield. In any case, this will be a profitable loss. At the very least, we now know the Glorious Lions battle team's trump card. Although Phoenix Rain was frustrated as well, one must know when to surrender. Fortunately, this was only their first competition, not a crucial competition. The only problem was that Zero Wing would most likely suffer a huge loss of resources this time. This is odd though. Hua Qiushue is a calm and collected woman. Why would she suddenly decide to deal such a vicious blow to a new battle team, going so far as to reveal her trump card? Guild leader, the Glorious Lions atmosphere is weird. Their previous team leader has been demoted to vice leader. The other members don't seem to like him either, Aqua Rose stated curiously as she watched the Glorious Lions rest a short distance away. Changing members at the last minute was a basic strategy in such competitions, so she had not been particularly surprised by the sudden development. After all, with every battle in the Dark Arena, a large number of people would analyze the players in the competition. If a battle team revealed their cards to the public, the team's next opponent would prepare a strategy to counter them. To prevent exploitation, last-minute substitutions were normal. Only, despite Everlasting War being the vice leader of the team, the others seemed to disregard him. None of them treated him with any respect. This was strange to behold. They're probably just not on the same wavelength, Ye Feng laughed. He could not help but shift his gaze towards Sirius. However, their new team leader is really powerful. I wonder how the Glorious Lions found such an individual. In the past, Ye Feng had never heard of Everlasting War becoming the vice leader of the Glorious Lions. As far as he knew, Everlasting War had always been the Glorious Lions team leader. Most of the battle team, though, had been replaced. After all, every fighter in the Dark Arena wished to become the organizer. Hiding one's strength was a basic strategy. Only Ye Feng had never imagined that the Glorious Lions had hidden so much strength. Everlasting War himself was already quite formidable. However, none of the substituted members were weak. Furthermore, the new team leader was immeasurably powerful. It was especially true for that great sword on Sirius's back. Ye Feng was extremely familiar with that particular weapon. It was one of God's domain's 36 famed swords, Bonfire. However, according to Ye Feng's memory, a berserker named Deathless had owned Bonfire. Could he be deathless? Ye Feng was fiercely curious. However, he shook his head and denied the thought. No. Deathless had not joined God's domain this early. Everlasting, for this competition, you'll fight in the last 3-on-3. Leave everything else to Thousand and the others, Sirius announced in a gravelly tone that left no room for argument as he glanced at Everlasting War. I understand. Even if Everlasting War was unhappy with this decision, he could only nod in agreement. In truth, however, he was not dissatisfied at all. If not for Sirius's guidance, he would not have improved so fast. Only, it was unfortunate that he would not get the opportunity to fight. There were a total of 5 matches in this competition. The first match was a 1-on-1. Following it would be a 2-on-2, and then another 1-on-1. If they won the first 3 matches, there would be no need for the last 2 3-on-3s. Thousand, you'll be our spearhead. Take it a little easy and don't let the opponent die too quickly. I don't wish to reveal the battle team's strength so soon, Sirius said deeply. I understand, the level 36 ranger called Thousand Blades nodded, chuckling. Seeing Thousand Blades walk up to the dueling ring, the other battle team members expressed their displeasure. Why has he been chosen again? What can we do? Our leader doesn't want to reveal too much of our strength. Naturally, sending Thousand is the best choice. After all, his combat power ranks in the middle of our team. He should be able to deal with the enemy easily while pulling the wool over those intelligence personnel's eyes. When the other members heard this deduction, they understood Sirius's decision. After all, they had already garnered plenty of attention with the sudden substitutions. Restraining their strength would benefit them. When Zero Wings members saw that their first opponent would be a ranger, everyone began to volunteer for the match. Guild leader, let me fight. We're both rangers. It is a good opportunity to determine which battle team is superior, Minor Wind said hurriedly. No. As a precaution, Aqua Rose will face him, Ye Feng said as he shook his head. He had already formulated his own plan. Chapter 783, Thousand Blades vs. Aqua Rose. When the Zero Wing team heard Ye Feng's decision, they were confused. The Cursemancer was a magical class, so it would be at a disadvantage against a ranger. At the very least, they should send a ranger like Minor Wind to negate the class advantage, or an assassin or berserker, which countered rangers. Guild leader, let me take him on instead. My class is particularly effective against rangers. This match will be ours, Fire Dance suggested. The others agreed with her proposal. There were a total of 5 matches in this competition, but they only needed to win 3 to emerge victorious. If they could win the first match, it would increase their chances of winning and the team's morale. Moreover, during their journey to the Dark Arena, the team had noticed a change to Fire Dance's weapons. Fire Dance, who had never replaced her True Fire Blades before, had replaced both of them. The True Fire Blades were set weapons. Both were also top-tier Dark Gold weapons. Even on their own, they were only slightly weaker than level 35 Dark Gold weapons. However, even 2 level 35 Dark Gold weapon could not compete against the True Fire Blade set effects. Yet Fire Dance had still replaced them. This told them that the new weapon's attributes must far surpass the True Fire Blades. Now that Fire Dance had gained a boost to her attributes, with her combat techniques, she should be able to defeat the ranger easily. No. Aqua is the best choice here. You have more important matters to deal with. Shi Feng shook his head. His decision was firm. Shi Feng knew quite a bit about the ranger named Thousand Blades. After all, he had been one of the Glorious Lions battle team's members in the past. Thousand Blades also often took part in the Dark Arena battles. In these top-tier competitions, attributes meant very little. Even if Minor Wind wore a Tier 1 set equipment and was slightly stronger than those wearing level 35 Dark Gold equipment in terms of attributes, the Tier 1 set equipment only consisted of 5 pieces. Minor Wind's other equipment would not give him an advantage against Thousand Blades. Both Rangers were also fully equipped with Tier 3 gemstones. To put it simply, Minor Wind did not have much of an advantage with his attributes at all. In the end, the fight would come down to techniques. Based on Shi Feng's estimations, if Minor Wind had an equipment score of 2,000 points, then Thousand Blades would have around 1,800 points. Although there was a gap, techniques could easily close that gap. This was commonplace in the Dark Arena. Moreover, tools were not allowed in Dark Arena battles. This meant that the fight would come down to techniques and equipment. Minor Wind had yet to reach the half-step refinement realm. He could only exert his body to its limits. How could he possibly challenge a refinement realm expert like Thousand Blades, someone who could control his body's power freely? After Shi Feng made his decision, the fighters' names appeared above the dueling ring, which had an area of 300 by 300 yards. Thousand Blades versus Aqua Rose. The Azura battle team is pretty pitiful. They're actually sending Aqua Rose, the most famous player on their team, into the first match. It seems they really don't have anybody who will be a challenge. The assassin Long Rainbow laughed. Unfortunately, even she is no match for Thousand. They would have been better off sending cannon fodder. They've just lost their only chance to win. Based on our reports, the Sword King Black Flame is the only capable player in Zero Wing. I really wish I could fight him. That way I could take the title of Sword King for myself, Blood Sun, the blue-armored swordsman, said. He could not help his sigh as he looked over the Azura battle team roster. The Glorious Lions' other members nodded their agreement. This first match told them everything they needed to know. The Azura battle team stood no chance of victory. If Aqua Rose were a refinement realm expert, even with a class disadvantage she could put up a good fight against Thousand Blades. Unfortunately, she was not. Even though she was only a thread away from the threshold without actually setting foot into the refinement realm, there would be a massive gap between her skills and Thousand Blades. Big Sis Rain, what is going on with Ye Feng? He sent Aqua Rose up. Can't he judge Thousand Blades' strength? Previously, Blue Phoenix had come to admire Shi Feng. Now, however, Shi Feng's choice had disappointed her. Thousand Blades had not bothered hiding his combat power at all. His actions were so smooth and natural, without any excess movement. It was obvious he had already reached the refinement realm. No matter how I look at it, Thousand Blades should have reached the refinement realm. Even if Ye Feng doesn't face the ranger himself, at the very least he should send Fire Dance, right? Fire Dance was Zero Wing's #1 assassin. In terms of techniques, she was on par with Aqua Rose. Moreover, the assassin class, more or less, countered the ranger class. Although Fire Dance had not reached the refinement realm either, with her attributes, it was not impossible to secure a win. Giving up the match without even trying was a waste. Phoenix Rain simply shook her head. She too did not understand Shi Feng's decision. If the weak wanted to take down the strong, they needed to grasp and strike at the enemy's weakness. Currently, it was obvious that the Glorious Lions did not take the Azura battle team seriously at all. It was the perfect advantage. Yet, Shi Feng had chosen to give up the match. Aqua Rose did not give Shi Feng's decision much thought. A one-on-one fight against such a powerful expert was a rare opportunity. Although she did not know what was going through Shi Feng's mind, she was very happy to face Thousand Blades, even though her odds of winning were low. Aqua, hold on a second. Shi Feng suddenly stopped Aqua Rose, who was about to enter to the dueling ring. He then retrieved an emerald staff from his bag and handed it to Aqua Rose. No need to rush the battle. Take this chance to hone your skills. Guild leader, this is... Aqua Rose was ecstatic when she saw the emerald staff. She then said, Guild leader, rest assured, I'll toy with him with everything I've got. Saying so, Aqua Rose approached the stage confidently. Your leader is a fool. He sent you to your death. Well, whatever. It's been too long since I killed a beauty like you. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Thousand Blades was arrogant, his lips curling into a cruel smile. He retrieved the copper-colored longbow from his back and took out 5 green steel arrows from his quiver. He had prepared these arrows himself. They were called scorpion arrows, each costing 10 silver to produce. They were extremely expensive. He wouldn't normally use them, but in this competition he could not be frugal. Even a slight graze from these arrows would cause massive damage. They would also poison the target when they struck, reducing their movement speed and attack speed as well as inflicting damage every 5 seconds. Magical classes already had low movement speed. If the scorpion arrows hit Aqua Rose, she wouldn't be able to dodge any follow-up attacks. She would become a sitting duck. Moreover, Cursemancers were different from Elementalists. Elementalists were human-shaped cannons with powerful burst damage. Cursemancers, on the other hand, focused on crowd control and debuffs. Their instantaneous firepower was subpar at best and was no match for rangers. Aqua Rose ignored Thousand Blades' provocation. She was utterly focused on her new staff, looking like a little girl with a new toy. "You." Thousand Blades was instantly indignant when he realized he had been ignored. "I'll teach you the meaning of despair." The countdown finally reached 0. With the sound of the bell, the match officially began. Scatter. Thousand Blades fired an arrow towards the sky and executed the Tier 1 AoE skill, Falling Rain. The descending scorpion arrows cast a massive shadow over Aqua Rose. Chapter 784, Attack and Defense. This is bad. When Blue Phoenix saw Thousand Blades start the battle with an AoE skill, she could not help her worry for Aqua Rose. Rangers were a physical ranged class, and the majority of the class's skills were single-target skills. Very few were AoE skills. Hence, when one fought a ranger, they only needed to focus on monotonous attacks from the front. Even ordinary players could dodge these attacks. However, as soon as a ranger learned an AoE skill, their attack patterns would no longer be monotonous. It would become significantly more difficult to avoid a ranger's arrows. An agility-type class might have an easier time coping with a ranger's AoE attacks, but Aqua Rose was a Cursemancer. She had far less mobility. Hence, it was even harder for her to dodge attacks from an expert like Thousand Blades. "I'll make you wish for death." Thousand Blades then pulled his bowstring into a full moon, firing scorpion arrows rapidly to surround Aqua Rose. He targeted Aqua Rose's right side, where she was most likely to dodge. When he had executed Falling Rain, he had focused the majority of the skill's effective area towards Aqua Rose's left. Hence, if she wanted to avoid the Falling Rain, she would have to dodge to the right. When experts fought each other, it was common to use the first attack as a diversion and the second attack to deal a blow. Surprisingly, Aqua Rose didn't move even after noticing the rain of arrows descend towards her. With a light wave of her emerald staff, a faint red protective barrier appeared around her. Life Shield, Tier 0 spell. Summons a barrier that absorbs damage equal to 30% of caster's maximum HP for 15 seconds. Cooldown, 36 seconds. Aqua Rose had a maximum HP of 9,200. This meant that the Life Shield could absorb up to 2,760 damage. However, Aqua Rose was not done. She then slammed her staff down, and a gray magic array appeared, covering the ground. Dark Strengthening, Tier 0 spell. Damage taken reduced by 20% and casting speed increased by 20% for 10 seconds for all allies within 10 by 10 yards. Cooldown, 1 minute. Thousand Blades Falling Rain was only one wave of attacks. Moreover, due to it being an AoE skill, its damage was not particularly high. In the end, the arrows descending on Aqua Rose had not even broken her life shield. As for Ranger's follow-up attacks, they were useless. Thousand Blades was slightly surprised that Aqua Rose had not fallen for his trap. Very quickly, however, he altered his attack pattern, choosing to attack the Cursemancer directly instead. Instantly, 5 arrows transformed into 5 streaks of green light as they flew towards Aqua Rose. All 5 arrows closed the distance of over 20 yards in the blink of an eye. Not wanting to be outdone, Aqua Rose waved her staff once more, sending out pitch-black dark arrows one after another. Aqua Rose's dark arrows clashed into Thousand Blades arrows, the impact throwing both attacks off course. In addition, Aqua Rose double-cast, using Dark Weakening on Thousand Blades. Immediately, dark fog appeared next to the ranger, swarming him. Noticing the attack, Thousand Blades retreated without hesitation, avoiding the dark fog. While he retreated, he continued his ruthless assault on Aqua Rose. For a time, the two combatants traded attacks, neither gaining an advantage. On one side, Thousand Blades utilized his high mobility to avoid Aqua Rose's attacks. Meanwhile, Aqua Rose utilized her various skills to defend herself. Even after multiple exchanges, neither fighter had lost a single HP. Aqua Rose is quite good. She has already grasped the technique to double cast. It's no wonder why she is quite famous. If she is nurtured properly, it is entirely possible for her to reach the peak of the virtual gaming world. Unfortunately, she joined the Azura battle team. Everlasting War had not expected Aqua Rose to be so powerful. Although Thousand Blades was holding back, it was still impressive that she fought the ranger to a standstill. Thousand Blades was already in the refinement realm. His physical control was quite refined. Hence, his combat was quite efficient. Ordinary players would find it difficult to deal with the ranger's direct attacks, not to mention the counterattacks he launched while evading. Moreover, every time Thousand Blades attacked, he fired at least 3 arrows simultaneously. When an ordinary player attacked, there was over an 80% chance that they would fail to avoid such a complex counterattack. However, with her ability to double cast, Aqua Rose was able to both attack and defend. Unfortunately, such high-intensity battles placed a heavy burden on a player's concentration and stamina. In such a battle, Thousand Blades could conserve more of his strength and outlast Aqua Rose should the battle drag on. This girl really does deserve her fame. After fighting me for a short time, she has already gotten a clear grasp of my movements. Thousand Blades clicked his tongue. Contrary to his expectations, Aqua Rose had not grown weaker as the battle progressed. Rather, her strength was growing. Thousand Blades no longer looked down on Aqua Rose. Initially, he had evaded Aqua Rose's curses easily. However, as the battle progressed, Aqua Rose's attacks improved. Now, she was beginning to predict his movements, and it was becoming far more difficult for him to evade her attacks. When the battle had first begun, he could fire 5 arrows simultaneously while dodging. Now he could fire only 3 arrows. Why are her dark arrows so powerful? With the power behind my scorpion arrows, even if they collide with her dark arrows, the impact should not affect their trajectories at all. Thousand Blades was very confident of his own arrows. He had never imagined he would encounter something like this. I can't drag this on any longer. Thousand Blades was now certain that dragging this battle on any further would only benefit Aqua Rose. Immediately, Thousand Blades used the Tier 1 skill Heart-Piercing Arrow. Shio. A silver arrow sliced through the air as it flew towards Aqua Rose. Heart-Piercing Arrow's power was astonishing. Even the Berserker on the Glorious Lions battle team would not take Thousand Blades' Heart-Piercing Arrow head-on. Hence, it was impossible for Aqua Rose to block his attack using the instant cast Dark Arrow. Pum. As expected, the Heart-Piercing Arrow shattered the Cursemancer's Dark Arrow. Such power. Aqua Rose knew that it was too late to cast another spell. Immediately, she used her staff to block the attack. Pum. When the Heart-Piercing Arrow struck Aqua Rose's staff, the Cursemancer was forced to take 5 steps back. Her arms were numb from the impact, and a damage of over -600 points appeared above her head. Die. Thousand Blades smiled faintly, taking the opportunity to launch a fierce assault. One scorpion arrow after another rained down on Aqua Rose like a storm. As the Heart-Piercing Arrow had interrupted Aqua Rose's rhythm, it became impossible for her to defend against the dozen or so arrows. Meanwhile, the only life-saving skill a Cursemancer had was Soul Protection. It could reduce the damage she took by 90% for 4 seconds. However, the skill had no defense against the movement speed reduction and dot effect of the Scorpion Arrow's poison. Once Soul Protection's duration ran out, her fate would be sealed. If you have to blame someone, then blame yourself for being a Cursemancer. Thousand Blades grew gleeful when he saw that his attacks would hit Aqua Rose. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, 3 massive Treants appeared before Aqua Rose. Like an iron wall, the Treants blocked all of the incoming arrows. What's going on here? Thousand Blades frowned when he saw the 3 massive Treants. Forest Sprite, Special Elite. Level 38. HP 240, 000/240, 000. A powerful expert could, at most, deal with 1 special elite of the same level. Now, however, 3 special elites had appeared before him. He also had a Cursemancer, a class with many control skills, to contend with. This was definitely a problem. Chapter 785. The Cursemancer that shouldn't be provoked. The three 6-meter-tall Treants earned shrieks from the audience the moment they appeared in the dueling ring. Do Cursemancers have such a skill? What skill is that? 3 special elites. The glorious Lions are going to have a difficult time winning this match. The players in the audience were not ordinary, but experts with extraordinary insight. Ordinary players might never have the chance to watch a match between God's domain experts, but to these players such opportunities were readily available. Hence, they were very familiar with the amazing aspects of God's domain experts. They were even more familiar with classes skills in God's domain. Cursemancers mainly relied on control skills in combat. As long as they could restrict their opponent's movements, they could finish them off easily. However, Cursemancers were somewhat weaker than elementalists and summoners when it came to survivability and damage output. However, if they had a meat shield to pin down the opponent, a Cursemancer's threat level would rise exponentially. After all, Cursemancer's tiers and levels were still low, and many of their powerful skills had relatively long cast times. The class was not suited for expert battles. In a battle between experts, the outcome could be determined at any moment. It would be suicidal to use a spell with a cast time of more than 1 second. Hence, very few Cursemancers were found in the Dark Arena's battle teams. Generally, the battle team's casters were elementalists and summoners. However, now that 3 special elites had appeared to assist the Cursemancer, these monsters would easily make up for her deficiencies. I've really underestimated the Azura battle team. It's no wonder why they dared to send a Cursemancer into the fight. Sirius could not help but shift his gaze toward Ye Feng, who sat quietly on the other side of the dueling ring. Tell Thousand to stop holding back. We must win this match. Everlasting War nodded. He then left his seat and approached the side of the dueling ring, forming hand signals to inform Thousand Blades. Players inside the dueling ring could not receive any messages or hear anything from outside the dueling ring. However, they could see what was outside the dueling ring. Hence, the various battle teams in the Dark Arena had created their own hand gestures and code words to convey instructions. At this moment, Thousand Blades' continuous retreat was exhausting him. Not only were the 3 forest sprites' defenses very high, but their movement speed was also relatively high. Avoiding the 3 Treants took a lot out of him. He also had to deal with the various control skills Aqua Rose sent at him. Hence, he had no choice but to focus on his defense. Yet, if he only defended without attacking, he would inevitably suffer defeat. Previously, he had accidentally allowed one of the forest sprites to graze his shoulder, and instantly, his HP had fallen by 2,318. His total HP was just slightly over 10,000. A few more hits would definitely finish him off. I can go all out? When Thousand Blades noticed Everlasting War's hand signals, his lips curled into a smile. He then retrieved 3 golden arrows from his quiver and fired them at the 3 forest sprites. Imprisonment arrows. The imprisonment arrow would prevent enemies within a certain range from leaving the area, and the only way to break free from the seal was to destroy the arrow itself. However, the imprisonment arrows would also reduce summoned creatures' damage by 80%. Even to Thousand Blades, these arrows were precious. After spending a large stock of precious materials, he had only managed to produce 5 imprisonment arrows. Now, however, to win this match, he had no choice but to use them. 3 golden streaks of light struck the 3 forest sprites. Immediately, the Treants were trapped inside golden cages. Meanwhile, each of the golden cages had 100,000 HP. Even though the forest sprites were special elites, after the 80% damage reduction, it would take them quite some time to free themselves from the cages. By the time they escaped from their imprisonment, the match would be over. After imprisoning the 3 forest sprites, Thousand Blades activated his berserk skill, Beastmaster's Soul. For 1 minute, his agility increased by 80%, strength by 60%, and movement speed and attack speed by 50%. The berserk skill also had a cooldown of 10 hours. After the ranger's strength and agility jumped, not only were his arrows faster, but they also contained far more power. In the next moment, a sonic boom echoed throughout the dueling ring. Numerous arrows arrived before Aqua Rose. However, as if she had expected this, Aqua Rose simply smiled as she waved her hand. Suddenly, 3 figures covered in blue flames appeared before her. When the powerful arrows struck these blue figures, they were forced to step back. Aqua Rose, however, remained unharmed. Thousand Blades' eyes nearly fell out of their sockets. How was she a Cursemancer? She was basically a summoner. He could accept the 3 forest sprites, but Aqua Rose could also summon 3 elite-ranked blue fire crows. Go! Aqua Rose immediately directed the 3 blue fire crows to charge towards Thousand Blades. Although the blue fire crows were not as powerful as the forest sprites, they were faster. Thousand Blades knew he could not afford to clash with the elite monsters head-on. Hence, he had no choice but to run about the dueling ring while finding opportunities to attack. If he dealt with the summoned creatures first, Aqua Rose would have enough time to activate an advanced spell. If that happened, the summoned creatures wouldn't be his only problem. He absolutely could not give Aqua Rose that kind of time. Still not giving up? Seeing the arrow fly at her, Aqua Rose activated the power of darkness, her attributes rising abruptly. She also activated the Blue Fire Heart skill, Blue Fire Devour. Although she would lose a significant portion of her mana and increase her mana consumption rate by 200%, her skill effects would increase by 200% for 30 seconds. Aside from Blue Fire Devour, Aqua Rose also activated Elemental Domain. Elemental Domain. All allies within a radius of 50 yards will have their magic damage increased by 15%, cast speed increased by 15%, and mana consumption decreased by 20% for 1 minute. Aqua Rose then fired a dark arrow. When the dark arrow clashed with Thousand Blades' scorpion arrow, the latter was thrown off course, whereas the former continued towards the ranger. Seeing this, Thousand Blades hurriedly fired another arrow, successfully diverting Aqua Rose's dark arrow. Why is it so powerful? Thousand Blades was stunned. The arrow he fired after activating his Berserk skill was even weaker than before. Thousand Blades had no clue that the staff Aqua Rose wielded was the epic-ranked staff, the Song of Beatrice. Aqua Rose already had higher basic attributes than Thousand Blades. Now, not only had Aqua Rose activated her Berserk skill, but she also had a support skill empowering her attacks. Hence, it was only natural that her dark arrows were far stronger. However, Aqua Rose did not give Thousand Blades too much time to think about it. She sent one dark arrow after another. At the same time, Dark Weakening's ominous fog began to appear around Thousand Blades. If the dark fog caught him, not only would his speed fall sharply, but his attributes would also decrease significantly. Again, Thousand Blades was forced to focus on his defense, escaping for his life. This time, however, he struggled far more than before. Previously, he had only needed to deal with the summoned creatures. Now, he had to deal with the summoned creatures and Aqua Rose's dark arrows. As a result, Thousand Blades' mobility was restricted. Meanwhile, this situation gave Aqua Rose sufficient time to cast the Tier 1 spell, Soul Cloud. Soul Cloud gathered the power of shadows to form 10 flying blades that could only be dodged, not blocked. Soul Cloud was considered one of the Cursemancer's sure-kill spells. After Blue Fire Devour's amplification, Aqua Rose was able to summon 20 pitch-black flying blades. However, she wasn't satisfied. Just before she finished casting Soul Cloud, she activated the third skill of the Song of Beatrice, the Song of Sprites. Song of Sprites increases the effect of a specific spell by 300%. Meanwhile, Aqua Rose chose to amplify none other than Soul Cloud. Immediately, the 20 pitch-black flying blades increased to 60. Each flying blade was even stronger than Aqua Rose's dark arrows. Impossible. Thousand Blades paled when he saw the swarm of flying blades hover before Aqua Rose, a chill crawling down his spine. He could feel the power within those pitch-black blades. A single one of them would devour at least half of his HP. Without waiting for Thousand Blades to react, Aqua Rose waved her finger. Immediately, the 60 flying blades transformed into 60 streaks of black light as they shot towards the dazed ranger from all directions. Wah, wah, wah. Even if Thousand Blades had already reached the refinement realm, he was powerless against the attacks of 3 summoned creatures and 60 flying blades. In the end, the streams of black light consumed him and he died tragically. Chapter 786, Strong Matchup. When the black lights dispersed, the victor's name appeared above the dueling ring. Aqua Rose. The entire venue fell silent. Aqua Rose's performance was simply too shocking. Not only could she summon monsters to fight for her, but her final Soul Cloud was also exceedingly powerful. It's no wonder why Ye Feng sent Aqua Rose to fight in the first match. It turns out that she has an impressive trump card. I'm guessing that not even the glorious lions expected such an outcome. Blue Phoenix shuddered when she recalled the might of Aqua Rose's soul cloud. Although Thousand Blades had activated his life-saving skills to defend against the attack, Soul Cloud could not be blocked, only dodged. Against flying blades from all directions, even Blue Phoenix was only confident in dodging 20 to 30 attacks with her techniques. Using Blink to escape would be her only option. However, Thousand Blades was a ranger. He did not have any instantaneous movement capabilities or skills that provided invulnerability. It seems that we don't understand as much about Zero Wing as we thought. Phoenix Rain revealed a bright smile as she watched Aqua Rose. One move to finish the enemy. Such situations were rare in the Dark Arena. Furthermore, Aqua Rose had yet to even set foot into the refinement realm. Since she had not secured victory with her techniques, then the only possibility was the Cursemancer's weapon and equipment. Previously, Ye Feng had displayed his overwhelming advantage in terms of attributes. Now they realized that Aqua Rose had the same advantage. The Glorious Lions had the support of the Super Guild Battle Wolves. Very few could compete with the Glorious Lions' equipment and weapons. Hence, it was inconceivable that Zero Wing's Aqua Rose had better equipment than Thousand Blades. Phoenix Rain's curiosity of the guild named Zero Wing grew. However, the following matches were the true hurdles the Azura Battle team had to overcome. A team had to win 3 out of 5 matches to win the competition. However, the Glorious Lions had a monster-like expert. One could say that the battle team had at least one match in the bag. If the Azura Battle team could not win 2 out of the 3 remaining matches, then it would lose. However, through this first match, everyone finally understood the Azura Battle team's strength. They also understood just how powerful Aqua Rose was. Victory with one move. In the future, anyone who challenged Aqua Rose would have to consider today's fight. For a time, the various major powers focused their attention on Aqua Rose. They began to investigate her past. She used to be an honorary elder of Twilight Echo? The upper echelons of Twilight Echo really are interesting. They chased such a talent out of the guild. Twilight Echo sure is rich. While others are frantically trying to recruit top-tier experts, Twilight Echo is chasing them away. The guild must have too many geniuses. It's no wonder why Twilight Echo has not been performing well in recent years. So this is their problem. Now that Aqua Rose has joined a small guild like Zero Wing, we might have a chance to poach her. The various major powers in the venue could not help but ridicule Twilight Echo. The expressions of Twilight Echo's upper echelons, who had come to watch the battle, twisted in response. Although they had known that Aqua Rose was a talented fighter and an experienced manager, they had never thought she would become this strong. Meanwhile, in the Glorious Lions battle team's resting area, the team members remained indifferent about the battle's outcome. They acted as if it were none of their business that they had lost the first match. This Azura battle team is fairly interesting. They are slightly stronger than I expected. It is no wonder why that Aqua Rose is Zero Wing's vice leader. Thousand Blades really lucked out this time, the swordsman Blood Sun commented disappointingly. He paid no attention whatsoever to Thousand Blades' defeat. After all, there was no way their battle team could lose this competition. On the Glorious Lions battle team, Thousand Blades' strength only ranked in the middle. None of their strongest combatants had taken part in the competition yet. On the other hand, the Azura battle team had already dispatched its strongest fighter. The competition's outcome was already self-evident. Let's see what the Azura battle team plans to do next. Though it doesn't really matter what kind of tricks they try to pull, the assassin Long Rainbow said, yawning. In the first match, the Glorious Lions battle team had been the first to send a combatant into the ring. For the second match, it was the Azura battle team's turn to send a representative. Ye Feng had no wish to prolong this competition. Hence, for the next 2-on-2 match, he sent Fire Dance and Violet Cloud. What's going on? They're actually sending a cleric. Is the Azura battle team giving up this match entirely? Wait, that Fire Dance seems to be the commander of Zero Wing's main force. The Azura battle team's representatives for the second match confused the crowd. Although clerics were not entirely useless, one would not normally send a cleric into a 2-on-2 match. After all, if the enemy focused on the cleric, the battle would quickly devolve into a 2-on-1 situation. To make things worse, the assassin class could not pin down players like the Guardian Knight and Shield Warrior classes could. Just what is going through that man's mind? Is he trying to forfeit the match? Phoenix Rain could not help her frown. She was aware of the three great experts of Zero Wing. They were Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, and Violet Cloud, respectively. Although sending two of the three great experts seemed like a good move, in the off chance that they were both defeated, the Azura Battle Team would lose all chances of winning this competition. Having them take part in the later 3-on-3 matches, taking the enemy by surprise like Aqua Rose had, would have been the wisest move. Yet Ye Feng had discarded that opportunity. Interesting. This brat's desire to win is impressive. He wants to win 2 matches in a row and rely on his own strength to fight for the final strand of hope? He is underestimating the glorious lions, Sirius muttered as he glanced at Ye Feng. Immediately he instructed, Rainbow and Blood, you two will fight. Show the Azura Battle Team's leader the glorious lion's strength. Blood Sun and Long Rainbow's combat prowess was only weaker than his among the glorious lion's battle team. It was especially true for Blood Sunday. To increase their chances of becoming the Dark Arena's organizer, the Battle Wolves had even given Blood Sun an epic weapon. With Blood Sun's skills and the epic weapon, the swordsman's combat power was only beneath his own. Hence, winning this match would be child's play for Blood Sun and Long Rainbow. In fact, Blood Sun alone was more than enough to defeat the Azura Battle Team's 2 representatives. Leader, rest assured, Long Rainbow confidently reassured the team's commander as he stood abruptly. Rainbow, wait a minute. Fighting one player is too boring. Let me handle the both of them by myself, Blood Sun said as he stopped Long Rainbow. After the competition I'll give you a bottle of life wine. How about it? The life wine was a Fire Dragon Empire specialty. It was known as a mortal world delicacy. Although the recipe was easy to obtain, the materials it required were extraordinarily rare. One could only obtain these materials if they were lucky. Aside from the drink's delicious taste, the life wine also had a certain probability of strengthening a player's physique. It was even more precious than dark gold equipment. Really? Long Rainbow was certainly tempted when he heard the words, life wine. This item was Blood Sun's treasure. Even their team leader had only managed to obtain 1 bottle from the swordsman after a lot of trouble. Normally Blood Sun would not even share a cup. Of course, Blood Sun assured. He wanted to test his new sword properly, and he did not want Long Rainbow to interrupt his fun. Fine, I agree. However, if it seems like you are going to lose for the sake of winning the competition, I'll have to join the fight. Of course, you'll still have to give me the life wine, Long Rainbow said after giving it some thought. Sure. Blood Sun grinned. Chapter 787, Phantom Sword. In the wide and spacious dueling ring, the assassin Long Rainbow stood in the corner while the swordsman Blood Sun took his place in the ring's center. The spectators were surprised. Normally, in a 2-on-2 match, teammates wouldn't stand so far from each other. They usually stood relatively close so that they could better coordinate their attacks and defense. Furthermore, they were both melee players, which was all the more reason not to stand 50 yards apart. With a distance of 50 yards, even a ranger, the class with the longest range, would not be able to assist a companion in battle. What are you guys trying to do? Fire Dance glanced at the distant Long Rainbow before shifting her gaze back to Blood Sunday. Carefreely, Blood Sun said, one-on-one battles are too boring, so I intend to take you both on by myself. Don't worry about it. The fight will be over very quickly. The audience could hear the players in the ring quite clearly. When they heard Blood Sun's words, an uproar shook the venue. They never thought that the Glorious Lions member would make such a bold statement. Nothing like this had ever happened in the Dark Arena before. Everybody wanted to win the competition, so why would anyone hold back their strength? If Blood Sun wasn't a fool, then he must be absolutely confident of his own power. So, you want a 1-on-2 battle? Rage flared in Fire Dance's eyes as she glared at Blood Sun's arrogant expression. Suppressing her anger, she said coldly, it seems the Glorious Lions really underestimates us. Ah, don't put it like that. This is a good opportunity for you to win the competition. Blood Sun laughed. He did not pay any particular attention to Fire Dance's cold-killing intent. The loss of the first match had wounded the Glorious Lions battle team's reputation quite severely. Blood Sun's first reason for asking Long Rainbow to step aside was to recover the team's reputation, while the second reason was to experiment with his epic weapon. However, Blood Sun did not think Fire Dance and Violet Cloud even qualified as test subjects. As you wish. Fire Dance stepped forward, standing in front of Violet Cloud. Understanding Fire Dance's intentions, Violet Cloud retreated. Interesting. Blood Sun did not mind the women's actions as he unsheathed the silver sword encrusted with 7 resplendent gemstones. Hopefully you don't lose too quickly. This is bad. Gentle Snow frowned as she watched the ring from the spectator stands. Snow, what's wrong? If Fire Dance could last against the party leader of the Flower of 7 Sins for so long, shouldn't she be able to defeat Blood Sun easily? Jianghu was more or less familiar with Fire Dance's strength. Even if Blood Sun was very strong, she did not think that the swordsman was guaranteed to win. You don't know this, but Blood Sun's swordsmanship is very odd. Even a shield warrior like War Wolf couldn't defend against his attacks, Gentle Snow explained as she shook her head. She had watched the video of the battle between War Wolf and Blood Sunday. She already had a general understanding of Blood Sun's strength. Although there was not much of a difference in terms of combat power between Blood Sun and a party leader from the Flower of 7 Sins, in terms of attack techniques, the former was definitely stronger. Now that Blood Sun wanted to face his opponents alone, it was the perfect opportunity for the Azura battle team to get rid of the swordsman. Immediately, Gentle Snow contacted Ye Feng. Guild Leader Snow, what's the matter? Ye Feng asked after accepting the call. Ye Feng, Blood Sun has strange attack methods. It is best for Fire Dance and Violet Cloud to finish him off together. If you allow Fire Dance to fight him by herself, she won't be able to defend against Blood Sun's attacks. Gentle Snow hurriedly warned the man. The match had not begun yet. There was still time for Fire Dance and Violet Cloud to coordinate their attacks and deal with Blood Sunday. Once the match officially began, it would probably be too late even if the two women banded together. Thank you for your warning, Guild Leader Snow, Ye Feng said, laughing. He had never expected Gentle Snow to call him in such a rush just to warn him. Seeing Ye Feng's calm reaction, Gentle Snow's anxiety grew. It was obvious that Ye Feng was not taking her words seriously. Blood Sun is very strong. He even defeated War Wolf and Soaring Snake while they were working together. War Wolf's shield couldn't get close to Blood Sun's sword before he suffered defeat. I believe you are aware of War Wolf's strength. If he couldn't even deflect Blood Sun's attacks, it will be very difficult for Fire Dance hold the man off, Gentle Snow explained in detail. In Starmoon Kingdom, War Wolf's strength was absolute. He could rank within the top 3 MTs of the kingdom. Defeating War Wolf was already impressive, yet the powerful shield warrior had not been able to withstand Blood Sun's attacks. I understand. If Guild Leader Snow doesn't have anything else, I'll disconnect the call now. The match is starting soon. Ye Feng nodded. He then disconnected the call. Hello? Hello. Gentle Snow was speechless as she stared at the already dark screen. Ye Feng is so infuriating. Even though you offered a warning with good intentions, he treated your words like they were nothing. It'll be his fault when his team loses. Jianghu grumbled. Leader, will it really be alright to let Fire Dance deal with that man by herself? Aqua Rose asked sternly. She had been sitting beside Ye Feng, so she had overheard the conversation with Gentle Snow. War Wolf's strength definitely ranked at the top of Starmoon Kingdom. If not for her equipment advantage, even she would not be a match for the man. Don't worry about it. We just need to sit tight and enjoy the show. Ye Feng waved his hand. Aside from Sirius, he had very detailed information on the Glorious Lion's combatants. Ye Feng understood Blood Sun's capabilities far better than Gentle Snow. In the past, Blood Sun had been quite famous in the Dark Arena. He had been known as Blood Sun the Phantom Sword. Although Blood Sun had only reached the Flowing Water Realm standard, the swordsmanship he used made it impossible to grasp his attack trajectories and rhythm. If one had not reached the Void Realm, it would be exceedingly difficult to defend against his strikes. If the Fire Dance of a few days ago were fighting, he would definitely instruct her coordinate with Violet Cloud. They could easily defeat Blood Sun with the Astromancer's strange attacks. Moreover, the assassin Long Rainbow was similarly extraordinary. In the past, he had earned the title Ghost Hand in the Dark Arena. When the two worked together, even a Void Realm expert would fall. However, Fire Dance was not the assassin she had been in the past. Even Ye Feng was unsure how much her strength had improved. This was the perfect opportunity to test her strength. Above the dueling ring, the countdown timer finally reached 0. You're not entering stealth? Blood Sun asked, unable to help his curiosity as he watched Fire Dance, who remained motionless 30 yards away from him. As an assassin, Fire Dance could only display her true power while hiding in the shadows. Generally, assassins would enter stealth as soon as the battle began and look for an opportunity to deal a fatal blow. That won't be necessary. Fire Dance sounded calm as she unsheathed 1,000 transformations and petrified thorn from her waist. Step by step, she slowly advanced on the swordsman before her. Good. Very good. I want to see just how long you can hold that arrogance. When Blood Sun heard her challenge, rage flared in his chest. This was the first time someone had looked down him. Taking a step forward, he used Wind Blade and dashed towards Fire Dance. Chapter 788, Legendary Power. Has she lost her mind? Gentle Snow was flabbergasted as she watched Fire Dance approach Blood Sun slowly. Zero Wings Guild leader was insane enough. She had never imagined that Fire Dance would follow in that man's footsteps. An assassin's abilities in a frontal confrontation were significantly weaker than a swordsman's. It would be very easy to defeat an assassin in a head-on clash. Blood Sun was not an ordinary expert, yet Fire Dance had forfeited the greatest advantage an assassin possessed. As soon as Blood Sun arrived before Fire Dance, the silver sword in his hand vanished. Following which, over a dozen streaks of silver light appeared around Fire Dance, surrounding her. Tier 1 skill, Wind Flurry. In the next moment, the dozen or so silver lights sliced through Fire Dance's body. An afterimage? Before Blood Sun could celebrate his attack, he noticed something odd. Abruptly he leaped forward. Shio. A streak of silver light then cut across where Blood Sun had just stood. Seeing her shadow steps fail, Fire Dance followed up with an absolute strike. Instantly, she transformed into a shadow as she plunged towards the swordsman. Dang. As soon as the shadow Fire Dance had transformed into arrived before Blood Sun, the swordsman parried the incoming attack with his silver sword, negating all damage. It's no wonder why you dared to fight me head-on. Your strength is so high despite being an assassin. Blood Sun was slightly surprised as the impact forced him to retreat 3 steps. He smiled and asked, however, how will you react to this move? Blood Sun charged at Fire Dance. Suddenly, his 2 swords transformed into dozens of afterimages. Every one of these images slashed at Fire Dance simultaneously. The sudden appearance of so many blades would have bewildered any opponent. However, this was not the most impressive aspect of Blood Sun's attacks. The speed of these sword images varied. Some moved faster than others. Moreover, the blade speeds constantly changed. Trying to grasp the swordsman's attack rhythm was nearly impossible, not to mention predicting the image's trajectories. The attack took Fire Dance by surprise. She couldn't differentiate which of these swords was real. If she rushed to defend or attack, the slightest carelessness could very well result in her death. Wind Steps. Fire Dance retreated as she utilized the less than 1 second invulnerability the skill provided. In addition, Wind Steps' movement speed increase allowed Fire Dance, whose movement speed was already quite high, to dash out of Blood Sun's attack range. You're really fast. You are definitely the fastest assassin I have ever seen to date. Although Blood Sun had hit Fire Dance, the assassin had utilized Wind Steps to block his attacks. Just as he was about to chase the woman down, he discovered that the assassin was already quite some distance away from himself. He couldn't hit her from this far if he wanted to. Although Fire Dance and Blood Sun's exchange had been brief, the audience was stupefied. These two are amazing. Why do I feel my chest tighten while watching these two fight? Every member of the audience had seen battles between experts before. However, Fire Dance and Blood Sun's battle ranked near the top of their lists. Both players were incredibly fast. Before anyone could react, they had already separated from their confrontation. All the onlookers saw was dozens of sword images and a flickering shadow. In the next moment, both fighters had swapped positions. They were too fast for the naked eye to follow. As a result, many among the audiences weren't entirely sure about what had just transpired. Blood Sun is powerful, Blue Phoenix exclaimed. Although most of the audience did not know what had happened, Blue Phoenix was a Void Realm expert. She had seen the exchange very clearly. Blood Sun should be the famed Battle Wolves' Phantom Sword. I had never thought that the Battle Wolves would be so desperate to host the Dark Arena. Phoenix Rain smiled bitterly. Phantom Sword. Although Blue Phoenix had never heard this name before, Even she had been unable to differentiate which sword images had been real and which had been fake. After all, she was too far away from the dueling ring. She could only rely on her sight, not her other senses. MHM. He is one of the great experts that the Battle Wolves have nurtured. I've also heard that Phantom Sword managed to defeat one of the Battle Wolves Guild elders, Phoenix Rain explained. It seems the Azura battle team won't be able to win this match. Why do you say that? Although Fire Dance is at a disadvantage, both her movement and reactions are very fast. She still has a possibility of winning this match, Blue Phoenix asked curiously. You underestimate the Battle Wolves? I've told you before that the Battle Wolves do not care about their reputation. The guild has even loaned the epic-ranked one-handed sword they obtained from a boss they stole to Blood Sunday. Knowing this, do you still think Fire Dance has any hope of winning? Personally, Phoenix Rain wanted the Azura battle team to emerge victorious. However, based on the information she had obtained, the gem-encrusted, silver sword in Blood Sun's hand should be the epic-ranked one-handed sword the Battle Wolves had plundered some time ago. A dark gold weapon could never compare to an epic weapon. The benefits of an epic weapon were simply too great. Moreover, Blood Sun had just been testing out his new weapon. Without utilizing his actual strength, he had backed Fire Dance into a corner. If he began to take the match seriously, he would only need an instant to defeat Fire Dance. An epic weapon is quite amazing. Just after equipping an epic weapon, Blood Sun can produce far more sword images. I wonder how long this young lady will last against him? Sirius revealed a faint smile after watching Blood Sun's performance. The Phantom Sword was no stranger to experts. His swordsmanship utilized the shift in swinging speed to generate afterimages. Ordinary experts would be hard-pressed to generate 3 perfect afterimages, but Blood Sun was a genius in this aspect. Using 2 swords he could generate dozens of perfect afterimages. However, this was not Blood Sun's most frightening aspect. Blood Sun's physical control also surpassed ordinary players by leaps and bounds. Even an expert would struggle to launch attacks with the exact same trajectory at full speed. However, Blood Sun could do just that. Moreover, he could perform the feat without error. Blood Sun's attack, which had just been an afterimage, could very well be a real sword in the next second. This ability made it nearly impossible to avoid or block his attacks. Without reaching the Void Realm, it was impossible to differentiate which of his attacks were real, and which were fake. In the dueling ring, Blood Sun launched a barrage of attacks at Fire Dance. However, Fire Dance maintained a subtle distance from him. She only needed 1 step to escape his attack range. This made it possible to dodge or block his attacks easily. Let's end the game here then. Blood Sun had mostly familiarized himself with Daybreak. Meanwhile, the duration of Fire Dance's wind steps was nearly over. Immediately, he activated Windwalk, increasing his speed as he charged towards the assassin. His swords then transformed into dozens of phantoms, blocking all of Fire Dance's paths of retreat. Just as the silver lights were about to devour Fire Dance, she tightened her grip around 1,000 transformations and swung the weapon in front of her. With just a light swing. Suddenly, countless sword lights appeared before Fire Dance. The sword lights shone like stars in the night sky. These sword lights clashed with Daybreak's phantoms. Pum. The sound of metal clashing reverberated throughout the dueling ring. Blood Sun felt his hands go numb instantly. He was also forced back 4 steps before he managed to stabilize his body. How did you do that? Blood Sun's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Even though Fire Dance had simply swung her sword, countless, shining sword lights filled the space between them. These sword lights were incredibly realistic, making it impossible to determine Fire Dance's true attack trajectory. When he came into contact with a random sword light, it had repelled him. Chapter 789, Realistic Illusionary Attacks. What happened? Everyone was confused when they saw Blood Sun pushed back. All they had seen was Blood Sun accelerate towards Fire Dance, and in the next moment, a silver light flashed. Blood Sun was forced to retreat by several steps before he stabilized himself. They could even see the swordsman's hands tremble. Originally, the battle had been in Blood Sun's favor. Now, however, the situation had changed completely. Nobody understood what had just happened. Who is that Fire Dance? Everlasting War's mouth gaped in shock. He had understood Aqua Rose's victory. After all, she was a famous newcomer in the virtual gaming world. She had also been nurtured by a super guild. However, no one had ever heard of Fire Dance, yet she was actually able to repel Blood Sun while he went all out. Everlasting War could not believe this to be real. Even he had an extremely difficult time defending against Blood Sun's Phantom Sword. He could only use an AoE skill to counter Blood Sun's attack. However, Fire Dance had only used one strike to repel the swordsman. With just a single swing of her sword, she filled the entire space between them with her sword's afterimages. It was practically impossible to defend against such an attack. Blood Sun's Phantom Sword was meaningless in the face of such an attack. One could say that Blood Sun was simply showing off his slight skill before a master. Compared to Fire Dance's attack, Blood Sun's Phantom Sword was a joke. Everlasting War was confused. He could not figure out how Fire Dance had managed to accomplish such a feat. Who could defend against an attack like that? She's already set foot into the refinement realm? Sirius narrowed his eyes as he began to evaluate Fire Dance carefully. Fire Dance's previous attack was astounding. Even Sirius had not seen how the assassin had pulled it off. Against such an attack, even he would be forced to evade the sword images. However, Fire Dance's performance showed that she did not use any excess movements when drawing her sword. She had not executed any special techniques at all. She had just swung her sword. Yet, this ordinary attack had created countless afterimages that filled the area before her. Unfortunately, he sat too far away from the battle. He had not been able to see the details of what had happened. Snow, look. Fire Dance repelled Blood Sun. What do you think just happened? Zhao Yueru turned to Gentle Snow, her mouth hanging open. Shaking her head, Gentle Snow responded with a surprised expression, saying, I don't know what happened either. This was simply too shocking. Only now did Gentle Snow understand why Ye Feng was so confident in letting Fire Dance take on Blood Sun alone. It turned out that Fire Dance had hidden her strength all this time. Compared to the audience's shock, Zero Wings members were utterly stupefied. When did Big Sis Fire learn such a peerless technique? That attack was so powerful. We'll definitely win this time. With a single swing of her blade, Fire Dance created countless deadly stars. Her powerful attack made it impossible to approach her or defend against her attacks. One could only cope with this vicious barrier if they attacked from a range or to use an AoE skill. In the dueling ring, Blood Sun's face twisted into a grave expression. However, he was no fool. He did not believe that Fire Dance's attack was a peerless technique. He suspected that she had used a skill. Hence, he strode forward and attacked the assassin using Phantom Sword once again. Although that move is quite powerful, all skills have a cooldown. I don't believe you can use it limitlessly. Blood Sun sneered. However, despite seeing the dozens of sword images flying at her, Fire Dance didn't move. Instead, she swung the 1,000 transformations upward violently. Peng. Countless silver lights flashed and she repelled Blood Sun again. Ye Feng laughed silently when he saw the dumbfounded look on Blood Sun's face. In terms of basic attributes, even an epic weapon was no match for a fragmented legendary weapon. However, this was not the largest benefit of wielding a fragmented legendary weapon. A fragmented legendary weapon would also grow stronger with the improvement of the player's combat techniques. Previously, Fire Dance had never utilized her full strength in battle. She had used plenty of excess movements when she swung her sword. In her last attack, however, there were none. Hence, she had displayed 1,000 transformations' true power. Realistic illusions. Although she had only swung 1,000 transformations once, every afterimage that appeared was real. Regardless of which afterimage the enemy encountered, that afterimage would become a true attack the moment they made contact. Fire Dance didn't need to think about how she should defend herself against Blood Sun's Phantom Sword. She only needed to swing her own blade. A simple swing could transform into an attack that incorporated both attack and defense. Countless people dreamed of achieving this level of swordsmanship. However, Fire Dance had achieved it easily with the 1,000 transformations. This was also why so many people desperately chased after legendary weapons. If a fragmented legendary weapon already possessed such power, a true legendary weapon would be terrifying. In the dueling ring, Fire Dance charged at Blood Sun and brandished her 1,000 transformations. Numerous sword lights flashed before Blood Sun's eyes. However, Blood Sun could not find the real weapon among the illusions. It seemed as if every afterimage was the real deal. He was already inferior to Fire Dance in terms of speed. The assassin's unavoidable attack only made things worse. Now, all he could do was attempt to block the attack with his swords, yet the instant his weapons clashed with Fire Dance's afterimages, the attack forced him back, both of his hands going numb as a damage of over -200 points appeared above his head. However, Fire Dance showed no signs of stopping as she assaulted the swordsman before her. As a result, Blood Sun's HP continued to decrease. This turn of events stunned the audience members. Nobody had imagined that an assassin could be so frightening. Fire Dance's slashes was a combination of violence and beauty. "Blood, I'll help you," Long Rainbow shouted. Long Rainbow could already see the severity of the situation. Immediately he entered stealth and charged at Fire Dance. "I have truly underestimated the Azura battle team. I had never imagined that your team would have such a powerful player. However, don't think that you have won just yet." As Fire Dance repelled Blood Sun, his HP gradually fell. If this continued, she would drain his HP, which totaled at over 10,000 in less than 30 seconds. Immediately, Blood Sun activated his berserk skills, his attributes rising abruptly. His HP shot from over 10,000 to more than 15,000. A blue glow enveloped his body. The epic weapon Daybreak in his hand also emitted a blue sword aura that was over 2 meters long, increasing Blood Sun's attack range significantly. Blood Sun then executed Phantom Sword and struck at Fire Dance. "Let's see if you can block this." Blood Sun revealed a sinister smile. He was clearly confident in his attack. He had activated his berserk skill, Sword Shadow. When activated, the skill increased all of his attributes by 50% and his attack speed by 80%. The skill also increased his attack range. At the same time, Blood Sun had activated one of Daybreak's skills, Consecutive Shadow Strikes. For 10 seconds, his attacks could neither be blocked nor parried. Fire Dance was only an assassin. Her attack range was shorter than a swordsman's. Now he had increased his attack range further. Moreover, even if Fire Dance's short sword clashed with Daybreak, the epic weapon would ignore the blade and strike Fire Dance's body. Immediately, a sword light phased through Fire Dance's 1,000 transformations, colliding with the assassin. However, Fire Dance suddenly split into 6 copies of herself. When Daybreak hit Fire Dance's body, it simply passed through her unhindered. He had not felt the sensation of his weapon cutting into flesh at all. An illusion? Blood Sun's complexion paled. He had not expected Fire Dance to have a move like this. "It's my turn now." Fire Dance smiled. Suddenly, all 6 female assassins charged at Blood Sun from different directions. Blood Sun brandished his 2 swords, attempting to defend himself. However, when his attack struck the Fire Dances, not a single one of them received any damage. All of them are fakes? Just as Blood Sun wondered about the skill. The 6 Fire Dances arrived before Blood Sun, surrounding the swordsman. All 6 assassins raised their weapons and swung downward. Blood Sun had intended to ignore Fire Dance's doppelgangers and rush out of the encirclement, but a silver short sword suddenly slid into his back, dealing -3,481 damage. "You're real?" Blood Sun reacted quickly, swinging his sword at the real Fire Dance behind him. However, when Daybreak cut across Fire Dance, it did not cause any damage. "Unfortunately, you've guessed wrong." The Fire Dance who stood to Blood Sun's left grinned as she swung her sword at the swordsman. Once more, Blood Sun lost a large chunk of his HP. In the blink of an eye, he lost over 7,000 HP. His HP was now dangerously close to 0. It would only take one more hit to end his life. However, Blood Sun suddenly smiled. "No. You're bait." Fire Dance suddenly felt a bone-chilling killing intent from behind her. Immediately, a streak of black light pierced through her back. "You noticed too late," Long Rainbow suddenly whispered with a cold smile. Chapter 790, Different Level. Everything had happened far too quickly. Long Rainbow was like a wild beast as he approached and ambushed Fire Dance stealthily. He had hidden his presence throughout the process. However, when he finally struck, he was like a venomous snake, both fast and accurate. What a pity. The Glorious Lions truly don't care about their reputation anymore. Previously, they've even declared that they wanted to go 1-on-2. Now it's become a 2-on-1 instead. None of the audience had expected the battle to change so quickly. Words could no longer describe Fire Dance's strength. She was definitely the most powerful assassin they had ever seen in God's domain. Her strength attribute was absurdly high. She had been able to suppress a swordsman expert with so little effort. Her attack that filled the ring with starlight could also suppress everything before her. She was practically invincible in a one-on-one battle. Meanwhile, standing behind the woman, both Long Rainbow's pitch-black dagger and the hand wielding the weapon passed through Fire Dance's body without any resistance. Long Rainbow did not dare believe his eyes. The target he had carefully chosen was just an illusion. Just as he was about to warn Blood Sun, he discovered a silver short sword cutting across Blood Sun's waist, eliminating the swordsman's final strand of HP. Even after Blood Sun's HP reached 0, the man had not realized what had happened, confusion as to why his HP had dropped to 0 filling his eyes. After Fire Dance killed Blood Sun, she released a sigh of relief. Long Rainbow had nearly forced her into a fainted state. With both Long Rainbow and Blood Sun having activated their berserk skills, she would most likely die before Violet Cloud could lend her support. Fortunately, the 1000 Transformations Phantom skill was no ordinary skill. It allowed her to swap positions with her doppelgangers without any telltale signs. The ability also didn't have a cooldown, allowing her to use it freely. All she needed to activate the ability was a thought. Hence, she had swapped positions with her doppelgangers the instant before Long Rainbow's dagger plunged through her. However, as soon as Fire Dance finished off Blood Sun, Long Rainbow reacted. Immediately he used the assassin class's strongest skill, Absolute Strike, transforming into a streak of shadow that assaulted Fire Dance. Unfortunately, by the time the black shadow pierced Fire Dance's body, Fire Dance had long since swapped positions with another of her doppelgangers. When Long Rainbow's body rematerialized and reappeared behind Fire Dance's doppelganger, Fire Dance swapped position with said doppelganger again. Holding the petrified thorn in a reverse grip, she spun and with centripetal acceleration she executed a perfect backstab, shoving her blade into Long Rainbow's back. Dang. Vanish. Fire Dance realized what had happened after Petrified Thorn was forced to a stop before it could strike the other assassin. Long Rainbow began to disappear immediately. Her lips curling into a smile, Fire Dance stated, "Unfortunately, even this move can't save your life." A second after Long Rainbow had disappeared, Fire Dance raised the Petrified Thorn above her and slammed it into the dueling ring's floor. Petrification Domain. This was the epic rank dagger's second skill. When activated, it dealt 500% weapon damage to enemies within 50 yards. Enemies hit would also suffer a 50% movement speed reduction for 10 seconds. In addition, the Petrification Domain increased Fire Dance's attributes and movement speed. Suddenly, with Fire Dance at the center, the ground began to turn stone gray, the affected area spreading outwards. In the blink of an eye, everything within 50 yards of Fire Dance turned stone gray. Meanwhile, Long Rainbow had been forcefully exposed. Golden, divine runes flowed around the assassin's body, and although Long Rainbow had not received any damage, his body had turned the same gray as the ground, his movement speed having plummeted. Damn it. This skill has a movement speed reduction effect. Long Rainbow's expression was grim as he watched Fire Dance dash towards him. Although he had activated magic immunity in his berserk skill, his basic attributes higher than Fire Dance's by a large margin, he was not confident of defeating Fire Dance in a direct confrontation. After all, even Blood Sun, who was the stronger of the two, had died while facing the female assassin head-on. His chances of victory were even lower. The only way he could win this match now was to eliminate the cleric Violet Cloud first. Once his skills cooldowns had completed, he could look for an opportunity to slay Fire Dance. However, that was no longer an option. Just as the 6 Fire Dances were about to reach Long Rainbow, the latter activated a skill that freed him from all control effects. Following which, he struck at the leading Fire Dance. Fire Dance did not bother resisting the attack, allowing Long Rainbow to strike as much as he wished. After Long Rainbow passed through Fire Dance's body unhindered, Fire Dance executed an eviscerate from behind the male assassin. However, 1000 transformations had failed to hit Long Rainbow. The fragmented legendary weapon only struck the afterimage the assassin had left behind. Before anyone realized it, Long Rainbow appeared behind Fire Dance's true body, executing backstab. Long Rainbow had thought of this plan after Fire Dance had forced him out of stealth. He had deliberately exposed a weakness in his defense, launching a surprise counterattack while Fire Dance attempted to strike. Die! Long Rainbow shouted, his eyes bloodshot with fury as he thrust his blade. In the end, however, his dagger still passed through the woman without any resistance. He had failed. How? Long Rainbow's eyes widened. Meanwhile, as soon as Long Rainbow's black dagger left Fire Dance's body, the doppelganger spun and slashed at the assassin. The two were too close. Even if Long Rainbow had predicted the attack, the Fire Dance's attack speed was simply too high. Furthermore, he had not yet recovered his stance after his full-powered attack. He could not defend himself. The silver thousand transformations became a stream of light that shot Long Rainbow's heart. Immediately, a damage of minus 10,648 points appeared above Long Rainbow's head, devouring more than 2/3 of the assassin's HP. Ignoring the pain, Long Rainbow abandoned his defense as he tightened his grip on his dagger and stabbed at Fire Dance. As an expert, his pride no longer allowed him to care about winning or losing this match. Only one thought went through Long Rainbow's mind: he needed to damage Fire Dance at least once. Although his attacks had only struck illusions, the pain thousand transformations caused him was absolutely real. Hence, Long Rainbow was certain that the Fire Dance before him was the real deal. Yet, just as his dagger was about to strike Fire Dance, Long Rainbow felt another sting in his back. As Long Rainbow's HP dropped like a stone, he turned his head to take a look, discovering that the real Fire Dance had appeared behind him without his notice. Following which, Long Rainbow fell to the ground, bitterness filling his eyes. Despite his berserk skill, even until his death, he had not managed to touch the real Fire Dance. This was the first time since he had joined God's domain that anyone had toyed with him to such a degree, and he had been completely powerless against it. Silence dominated the spectator stands. Compared to this battle, the previous battles had been a joke. The battle had only lasted several seconds, yet before anyone realized what was going on, the two great experts of the Glorious Lions battle team were dead. Although none of the audience members understood what had just happened, they had learned one thing from watching Fire Dance's battle. All attacks against Fire Dance were ineffective, while every one of her attacks was vicious. This fight had felt like a dream. Two great experts had died without offering the slightest resistance. Aside from their confusion, everyone among the audience admired and feared Fire Dance. The Glorious Lions' two great experts were undoubtedly extraordinary individuals. Even in the dark arena, their strength ranked at the top. Yet, even after these two great experts had activated their berserk skills, Fire Dance had defeated them without any berserk skill whatsoever. Berserk skills generally improved a player's combat power significantly. It should have been impossible for a player without a berserk skill to contend with a player with one active. Today, however, every player in the room had been given a living example to the contrary. This was no longer an issue of attributes. Both sides were simply on entirely different levels. Just who is this Fire Dance? The major powers in the audience grew quite curious about Fire Dance's identity. Chapter 791, Old Monster. Above the wide, spacious dueling ring, the system displayed Fire Dance and Violet Cloud's names as this match's victors. When the audience saw this announcement, an extraordinarily heavy atmosphere overtook the venue. With a mysterious combat technique, Fire Dance alone had defeated two great experts from the Glorious Lions battle team. At this moment, Fire Dance's name etched itself deeply on everyone's hearts. Amazing. I had never thought that Zero Wing would have hidden so much of its strength. It's no wonder why Black Flame could afford to excuse himself from such an important event. When Phoenix Rain looked at Fire Dance, she felt as if a whole new world had opened up to her. Although Fire Dance's combat realm was mediocre at best, the assassin's bewildering combat method was a first for her. Even Blue Phoenix, a Void Realm expert, would not have any defense against Fire Dance, much less Long Rainbow and Blood Sunday. The only method to deal with the assassin's mysterious combat method was to use large-scale destruction spells or manipulate several dozens of flying blades like Aqua Rose had and attack from a distance. Even having significantly higher attributes than Fire Dance would be of little use against the assassin. However, both large-scale destruction spells and the Tier 1 spell, Soul Cloud, had a long casting time. During this period, with Fire Dance's speed, she could kill her opponent several times over. If even magical classes would have such a difficult time against Fire Dance, physical classes would have even more trouble taking her down. Even Hua Qiushui, who watched from the spectator stands, was stunned by the match's outcome for quite some time. The Azura Battle Team, a team new to the Dark Arena, possessed such a strong framework. It was simply inconceivable. Whether it was Thousand Blades, who had fought in the first match, or Blood Sun and Long Rainbow, who had just been defeated, all three were experts that she had handpicked herself. She was very familiar with their strengths. Yet all three had failed. She had never expected this outcome. Where did this Azura Battle Team come from? Hua Qiushui wore a gloomy expression. She was in a very bad mood. To avoid the unexpected, she had been as careful as possible, yet after dispatching the members of Team 2, they had still lost 2 matches in a row. If they lost another match, they would lose the entire competition. It's no wonder why he dared to challenge my Glorious Lions Battle Team. Sure enough, he has some ability. Hua Qiushui could not help but shift her gaze towards Ye Feng. Initially, she had seen Ye Feng a minor character that did not necessitate any attention. Now that he was the Azura Battle Team's leader, however, she could not afford to ignore him. Meanwhile, when Exemplary Willow saw Hua Qiushui's gloomy expression, she more or less understood the Glorious Lion's situation. However, Exemplary Willow was truly confused. Zero Wing was merely an upstart guild. She could deal with the guild's victory over the Star Alliance in the previous war, but it now forced Hua Qiushui's battle team into a serious predicament. This was simply inconceivable. Auntie Hua, we will win this competition, right? Exemplary Willow asked worriedly. Before the competition had begun, she had wagered all of the rare materials and equipment she had obtained after many difficulties on the Glorious Lion's victory. She had obtained the materials and equipment from Twilight Echo to use as bets. As a precaution, she had bet her funds on the Glorious Lions. On the off chance that the battle team lost, Twilight Echo's development would most likely stagnate. Rest assured, although the Azura Battle Team's performances were shocking, such powerful skills and equipment are not that easily obtainable. The fact that the Azura Battle Team had 2 or 3 such items is impressive. However, it is unlikely that they will show off any more in the following matches, Hua Qiushui responded confidently. Her confidence stemmed from the fact that the third match was a one-on-one. The Glorious Lions had sent their strongest fighter, Sirius, into this match. Hua Qiushui had also investigated Zero Wing during the small break after the last match. The guild only had so many experts. Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, and Violet Cloud were known as the guild's 3 greatest experts. After including Ye Feng, a hidden expert of the guild, Zero Wing only had 4. The other experts within the guild were mediocre at best. They had no reason to fear them. One of the remaining matches was a one-on-one, while the other 2 were 3-on-3s. In a 3-on-3, Ye Feng was the only true opponent the Glorious Lions had to face. Even if the Glorious Lions members were no match for Ye Feng in a one-on-one, with 3 people using their sure kill skills simultaneously, they could easily finish off the swordsman as soon as the match began. Afterward, they could take their time finishing off the other 2 Azura Battle Team members. If Ye Feng fought in the one-on-one, all the better. Sirius could win the competition by himself. The following matches would only be for show. Regardless of what decision the Azura Battle Team made, the outcome would be the same. It seems the Glorious Lions can't endure this any longer. Phoenix Rain's lips curled up slightly when she saw Sirius walk onto the dueling ring. The Glorious Lions lineup was gorgeous. After all, the Super Guild Battle Wolves supported the battle team. Zero Wing was merely an upstart guild. The fact that it had forced the Glorious Lions into a corner was considered a miracle in the Dark Arena. Big Sis Rain, who do you think the Azura Battle Team will send for this match? Blue Phoenix could clearly feel the terrifying aura Sirius radiated. The instant Sirius entered the ring, her instincts warned of extreme danger. This was the first time she had experienced such a feeling. Although she had never fought Sirius, she could already see her defeat. The gap between them was simply too wide. He was someone she could currently defeat. Phoenix Rain only shook her head in response to Blue Phoenix's question. Even she didn't know what was going through Ye Feng's mind. After all, the man's performance until now had surpassed her expectations. Hopefully Ye Feng won't try to be a fool. As long as he doesn't fight Sirius, there is more than a 50% chance that Zero Wing will win the competition. Blue Phoenix nodded, agreeing with Phoenix Rain's words completely. In the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, although Martial Dragon was strong, he was not so strong that she could not see the difference between them. On the other hand, Blue Phoenix could not even begin to guess how wide the gap was between her and Sirius. However, after giving it some thought, Blue Phoenix thought that this situation was reasonable. After all, Martial Dragon had only recently awakened his domain. Sirius, on the other hand, was already an old man in his 50s. In front of an old monster like Sirius, Martial Dragon was no more than a newborn. Martial Dragon only had the potential to contend with Sirius in the future. Although Ye Feng was also very powerful, he was not yet qualified to face Sirius. Please don't be a fool. Blue Phoenix suddenly worried for Ye Feng. Experts were prideful beings. When they encountered stronger experts, they had the urge to challenge them. Furthermore, opportunities to fight against old monsters like Sirius were extremely rare. If Ye Feng acted rashly and tried to fight Sirius himself, this competition would truly be over for the Azura battle team. Brat, what are you waiting for? Sirius, who waited in the dueling ring, chuckled softly as he said, or are you a coward? This old bastard. Ye Feng rolled his eyes at Sirius's provocation. Leader, are you really going to face him? Aqua Rose, who sat beside Ye Feng, asked. After feeling the killing intent Sirius radiated, she had paled to a ghostly white. This was the first time she had felt such a cold and tangible killing intent. Just bathing in it stole her breath. The difference in their combat experience was like the difference between heaven and earth. They were on entirely different levels. Of course I'm going to face him. Opportunities to fight such old monsters don't come by very often, Ye Feng said as he contained the excitement in his heart. Slowly he approached the dueling ring. Chapter 792, The Ye Feng That Cannot Be Underestimated. Seeing Ye Feng approach the dueling ring, Phoenix Rain frowned. Ye Feng is still too young and aggressive. Although Phoenix Rain could understand Ye Feng's desire to challenge powerful experts, he should also consider the time and place. Sirius was an old monster that Ye Feng had no chance against as he was right now. Even if he wanted to challenge Sirius, at the very least, he needed to awaken his domain first. Otherwise, the only outcome would be a miserable defeat. When Blue Phoenix saw this, however, she somewhat envied Ye Feng. Old monsters like Sirius stood at the true peak of God's domain. Hence, many gaming experts' ultimate goal was to challenge monsters like Sirius and emerge victorious to prove themselves worthy of standing at the peak as well. Blue Phoenix had yet to qualify to challenge such old monsters. However, Ye Feng did. Why wouldn't she be envious? Although Sirius had intended to provoke Ye Feng, this showed that he acknowledged the swordsman's strength. He believed that Ye Feng was qualified to challenge him. Otherwise, an old monster like Sirius would not stoop so low as to provoke a youth. If she were in Ye Feng's shoes, she too would accept this challenge to see what kind of heights she could reach. This kid is insane. He is actually challenging Sirius. A victorious smile emerged on Hua Qiushui's face when she saw Ye Feng walk up the dueling ring. In order to recruit Sirius for the Glorious Lions battle team, she had made a powerful promise to the Battle Wolves. Had she not, the Battle Wolves would not have allowed Sirius to join the team. Even Hua Qiushui wasn't sure of Sirius's true strength. However, she was certain of one thing. When she had first met Sirius, she had wanted to test the man's skills. Hence, she had hired over a dozen top-class professional bodyguards to fight the old man. The outcome of that fight had far surpassed her expectations. Every one of the bodyguards she had hired was a top expert, yet not one of these bodyguards had even laid a finger on Sirius. Before she realized what had happened, all of her bodyguards were lying on the floor. She had not dared to move a single muscle. She had felt as if chains had bound her. At that time, she had finally realized how greatly she had underestimated the experts of the virtual gaming world. After all, Sirius had even defeated her most trusted bodyguard, Everlasting War, with a single move. Hua Qiushui had seen such situations before. However, that had been when she had hired ordinary people as bodyguards. In front of Sirius, even experts were no different than ants. Moreover, this had happened in the real world. Meanwhile, when Ye Feng and Sirius stood in the dueling ring, staring at each other, the stage's atmosphere seemed frozen. Not bad. Sirius nodded slightly as he watched Ye Feng. You have reached such a standard at such a young age. You can even endure my mental suppression. It's been a long while since I've seen such a promising brat. You also agreed to fight me. Before the match begins, what would you say to placing a bet? A bet? Ye Feng could not help but laugh when he heard this. What do you want to wager? The girl named Fire Dance on your team is very promising. It would be a waste for her to remain on your team. She could have an even brighter future, so I'd like to accept her as my apprentice. I can help her advance on her path. In the future she will grow to surpass me. Hence, if your Azura battle team loses, I want Fire Dance to become my apprentice. Of course, if our Glorious Lions battle team loses, I'll tell you how to advance your combat standards. What do you think? How to improve my combat standard? Ye Feng had to admit that he was tempted. After reaching his level, it was extremely difficult to improve further. Awakening a domain was not a simple matter. Countless geniuses were stuck at this bottleneck and were unable to enter that realm. Even he had yet to discover any clues about awakening his domain. Yet, Sirius declared that he had such a method. In Ye Feng's opinion, however, such a possibility should exist. In the past, he had merely been the guild leader of a second-rate guild. He had very little information regarding the top powers of the virtual gaming world. These top powers had existed for decades. They all had their own methods to nurture experts. Hence, it was not entirely impossible for them to discover a method to awaken a domain. Unfortunately, this method was an absolute secret. Otherwise, how could the various super guilds nurture so many refinement realm experts? This was the difference between ordinary guilds and super guilds. A small guild was lucky if they even had a few top-tier experts. A large guild was considerably powerful if it had several refinement realm expert leaders. However, super guilds could easily nurture their own refinement realm experts. An expert nurturing system would be a powerful asset to Zero Wing. Ye Feng inwardly sighed. What do you think? Sirius asked seriously. This is not something I can decide. Fire Dance has her own plans. However, what if I offer something else as a wager? Ye Feng was sorely tempted by Sirius's proposal. If he could obtain a reliable method to improve his abilities, rather than search for the method himself, it would save him a lot of time. He could also use that method to nurture others. Something else? I'm not trying to look down on you, but there is nothing in the virtual gaming world that can tempt me. Sirius had not expected Ye Feng to propose a counteroffer. He could not help but laugh as he said, neither coins nor epic items are out of my reach. I just need to invest a little time to obtain them. If you are trying to tempt me with such things, don't bother. What about the stable design? Ye Feng smiled faintly. What did you say? Sirius was taken aback. You have the stable design. A super guild like Battle Wolves had no issue obtaining epic items. They needed little time to amass a collection. In fact, the Battle Wolves already had several epic items. Hence, epic items weren't tempting in the least to Sirius. The stable design was a different story. The various large guilds in God's domain were currently going crazy over mounts. They were frantically gathering the required materials to construct a stable. However, although many guilds throughout God's domain had obtained the needed materials, until now, none had obtained the precious stable design. Acquiring this design was simply too difficult. If the Battle Wolves could obtain the stable design and begin nurturing their guild mount ahead of the other guilds, the guild would surpass its competition by a large margin. They would have a greater advantage when competing for dominance over God's domain. What do you say? Ye Feng understood just how important the stable design was to a guild. It was an important item that could raise the guild's overall strength. The stable design was far more valuable than several epic items. Even super guilds were trying desperately to obtain the stable design. After all, sheer strength was not enough to obtain the item. One also needed to be lucky. Regarding Ye Feng's ownership of the stable design, he no longer had a reason to hide the information. In any case, the moment he began constructing the stable, the secret would be out. I have to say, I am touched by your sincerity. When Sirius looked at Ye Feng once more, he suddenly felt that the young man before him was not as simple as he had thought. The fact that Ye Feng had the stable design, which even super guilds had failed to obtain, was proof enough of the young man's abilities. After both sides agreed to the wager, the countdown came to an end. Sirius immediately revealed a smile as he unsheathed the flame-red greatsword from his back. He then swung the weapon violently at Ye Feng, who was 20 yards away. Instantly, a sea of fire emerged from the dueling ring's floor, transforming into a ferocious beast that pounced on Ye Feng. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.